And I guess Joe will show up if he's not into his game. Welcome. This is a spontaneous live stream. We have Ron from Toronto here. Joe Parrish is going to be joining us to talk about the intellectual dark web. And Ron, you have a video coming up tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I'm recording it tomorrow for my YouTube channel, RonFromToronto. I'll probably start posting clips from it within about a week or so after I do the interview tomorrow. And it's with William von Hippel. He's a professor of social psychology. He was on Rogan actually like a year and a half ago for his book called The Social Leap. And essentially the book argues very convincingly, I think, that basically humans, our ancestors, when they left the rainforest for the open savanna, that put us on a completely new evolutionary pathway because our ancestors were extremely adept at dealing with the challenges of living up in the trees. But when you put them on the ground, they're fast, but they're not that fast. And they're strong, and they're not that strong. And so the biggest thing is they would have gotten just utterly steamrolled by other forms of life in the area, like big beasts and whatnot, if it weren't for their ability to cooperate with each other. And once they started cooperating, that actually ended up apparently putting humans on our ancestors on a brand new evolutionary pathway where so we had to cooperate in order to compete against threats in the open savanna. But just like if you've ever watched the show The Walking Dead, initially the biggest threats is non-human. In the show, it's the zombies. But eventually the humans that survive, they become so adept at dealing with the zombies that soon enough, the biggest threat is other human tribes. And so I think what seems to have happened with our ancestry is eventually they became quite adept at dealing with the beasts of the field. And they did that through cooperation. And then eventually our biggest threats became other human tribes. And that would set us off in a competitive, social cognitive evolutionary arms race. And that would lead to increasing social sophistication as well as increased broader sophistication because it would select for the ability to communicate more, which means being better able to communicate, being able to produce and receive communication, better memory, better social cognition, so you know what is being communicated to you and you know how to teach others, and so on and on and on. But eventually what would happen is, our other humans would become our biggest threat. And so that was the big thing his book was about, essentially. But what I'm interested in is essentially we are inherently, humans are nothing if not a tribal species. We wouldn't have survived if we weren't. And if you ask any evolutionary biologist, they will tell you that if you take an organism out of the environment to which its species is adapted, all bets are off with respect to how well it will do. And to the extent that there is a bet, it's probably a bet you would not want to make. And humans, we are essentially today now, most of us are all members of a tribal species, but most of us have deeply broken tribes. And I think a lot of our problems can be traced back to that in part, if not in big part. So things like depression, anxiety, suicidality, even things like personality disorders, substance abuse. You could even take it towards things like political corruption. An example of political corruption, how that would play out is we grew up in small tribes, right? Dunbar's number refers to the number of people that most other people can kind of keep tabs on. We have blown Dunbar's number out of the water. Right? It's like in a small tribe, you can talk to the chief tomorrow if you want to. It's not like any of us can go talk to Biden. Right, the distance between the leader and the led is so massive that Joe Biden and any president it would be much easier for them to screw me or you or any of us over than it would be to for a chief who's actually our third cousin or our great uncle or something.
Right, yeah.
And like we see them all the time. They're the father of our mother or something. You know what I mean? Like it's much
Right,
easier.
yeah.
So yeah, that's a summary.
Oh,
Cool.
good.
I
So,
found the book and posted it in the comments. So post a
Yeah.
Google link to it in case anyone wants
and
to
I
check
put
it out.
Ron's link in the description. So it's not going to air tomorrow, but you're interviewing tomorrow, and then you'll post it on your site.
Yeah, in clips, and then probably do the full thing.
Okay. And
Hey, Drama
Jeff
Type.
in the audience. Joe, we have Joe too, who is going to talk to us about the intellectual dark web and the project you just launched. Welcome,
yes.
Joe.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Do you guys hear me all right?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's great, man. Everything's
I like
good.
Okay.
Yeah, your
Yeah.
video and everything looks really great. It's good.
Okay, yeah. I switched to a better camera because I thought it would be in order than the one built into my laptop, which I was using just a moment ago. But yes, I just started working in the IDW community full time. So it's a nonprofit organization that I started technically last year, while I was, still working a normal job and just kind of getting the pieces lined up before I could make the jump that I have now. For folks familiar with the IDW, which I think a lot of folks watching this might be, but some might not be. It's an acronym standing for the Intellectual Dark Web, and it refers to that that very loose community of individuals, starting back in about it was early 2018 that the term was coined and got sort of a mainstream appeal. It largely referred to a group of podcasters, journalists, public intellectuals, some academics who would be able to have difficult conversations together and not become enemies over it, which kind of had like become a thing at that point in time. Common place where these folks were gathered and met was like on the Joe Rogan podcast, on Dave Rubin's podcast, back when the Dave Rubin's podcast was more in the middle. I guess his was more of a proper show than a podcast, but you get my point.
Yeah.
And then it involved names like Sam Harris, Jordan Peterson, the Weinstein brothers.
Yeah, the Weinsteins,
yeah, and then and it involved other people to a lesser degree. And sometimes they were called IDW adjacent to describe the unclear relationship to it. Then, of course, you could be said to describe the community of people who are following these folks, consuming their content, learning from them, and being inspired by the kinds of discussions they were having. So, I've been involved in this. If we think of the community as being like what the web is in it, right? Like this network. I've been involved in that since 2018, mainly through the subreddit, our Intellectual Dark Web. I've been moderator there for 5 years now. I was promoted to moderator status by the creator of the subreddit not long after it, and I'm one of the 2 head mods there now who run it. And so, it's largely out of this online community that I've built a nonprofit organization that aims to sort of meet what the values and goals of the IDW were, to the extent that such a loose group had those, but try and give it sort of a vehicle to maybe realize some of those in the past. And so,
Jeff, I was just going to say, what are some of those values?
Yeah, so again, this would be clear to folks who are already familiar with it and had been, following it as it happened. But in large part, it's, the IDW kind of formed in response to the way the mainstream media has become increasingly sensationalized, and civil conversations are difficult to have. Some of it due to the way individuals now behave through social media, but some of it through what's easy to monetize, on mainstream media. So whether it's CNN or MSNBC or Fox News, sound bites of things that are easy to sort of replay, of things that are maybe not well expressed and maybe have fiery language, are things that make money. It's what helps them sell ad revenue. And that's a lot of what our media became over the last 20 years. And it's really sort of reached like this, turning point where society just seems to have lost a lot of self-restraint in the way it approaches conversations. And it's very difficult to discuss anything now, depending on, who the other person is, without being, say, accused of being like a communist or a Nazi. If you're in the middle, if you just take a moderate position one time on something, you can often be castigated as such by that. And then, of course, there's the broader concern with how controversy can be supercharged by the internet. And so if something controversial happens, or even something that is imagined to be controversial happens, it gets shared or retweeted or broadcast across the web. And, an individual maybe who has become a pariah based on bad information is now incriminated in the eyes of millions overnight. And this famously happened to Brett Weinstein with what happened at the Evergreen College. And I know Brett Weinstein's gained some new infamy for the way he's treated the COVID topic with his Dark Horse podcast. But if we look at what actually got him thrust into this limelight, it was something that was completely unfair to him. It was based on an intentional misrepresentation of how he sent an internal email, disagreeing with the way the college was handling the day of absence. I'll let folks look into the details of that, because
Benjamin Boyce has excellent footage of it. He has a whole
it's been well covered. But the bottom line is that Brett was accused of saying things that were completely unlike it. The emails that he put out have been released. You can see what he actually said, but it actually caused mobs to go after him on the campus, and ultimately he and his wife had to leave the school. They're no longer professors there. They ended up having a settlement with Evergreen. And a lot of it is a direct result of the way things are handled now, which is people believe a negative take on events before they verify it, and they take action on it. And then when it's proved to be wrong, there's nothing made to repair it. This is the essence of what makes cancel culture, such a concerning thing. And it's why it was, cancel culture was a major concern among people within the IDW starting around 2018, because it entails a lot of things. Some of it is economic and financial. You lose your job. What do you do then? That's something that Brett Weinstein essentially faced when he found himself no longer being a professor. He eventually, got into podcasting. Some folks, of course, don't find it that they're in such a position to make such a transition. And if you're not a celebrity and you get canceled, what happens then? And then even if you are a celebrity, or if you're wealthy, you're financially well off, what happens to the social and cultural ties that get severed for you? And how do you move on after that? Because sure, you can have money to ensure that you'll be able to feed and house yourself, but money serves a purpose. Money helps us do things in life to make life worth living. And if people turn their backs on us based on something that's misleading or just completely untrue, that can be a problem. That isn't to say there aren't people who have been canceled due to things that are true. And in many ways, the public backlash is deserved. But we have lost our ability, with the way that things spread so quickly over the internet, to differentiate the real cancellations from the fake ones, and have a public response that's in proportion to it. There's a lot of reasons that go behind this, but and you could say cancel culture is a spectrum from full-on cancellation, you're excommunicated from society. Somebody has to hand you a basket of food through your window almost. And then there's just losing a lot of friends and having maybe some temporary hardship until the controversy blows over. But that's a lot of what I think informed it. And so they wanted to create, why is it called the intellectual dark web? They wanted to create this community, this abstract space, right? It's not on the dark web. Nothing about this has ever actually occurred on the dark web. But the idea of it, let's say there is something like a dark web for intellectual discussion. That's the point of the IDW. Of course, being loosely organized and kind of, being one of the shortcomings of a lot of kind of counter mainstream movements is that they've never often been well organized, right? I was very active in politics in the Democratic Party before. People like the romanticism of grassroots organizing, but grassroots by its nature is hard to organize. It's almost anti-organization by its nature. And so by making a nonprofit organization, through which we can have some actual, let's say, cash flow from contributions to fund different projects, we can make some of these things that I have seen the community want to see done. And I know I saw it because I watched a lot of these and now what moments happen in the subreddit over the last 5 years. We're almost at 100,000 subscribers now. We've grown quite large, and that's with me actively slowing down the growth of our subreddit. You moderators are allowed to control the algorithm that allows their subreddit to show up in people's feeds as recommendations. And so I've turned that off so we could kind of slow it down a bit, mostly for moderator reasons, just because when we have a sudden influx of members, it's new people who often are carrying various chips on their shoulder, and we need time for them to kind of get accommodated. So they create a whole new series of just problems, fires that the moderators have to put out. So we're going through these cycles now. We'll turn it on to grow it, turn it off to sort of, I guess, let the new people get accommodated. If we hadn't turned it off, we could probably be at 150,000 subscribers by now. And then, of course, there are other areas on the web where I've seen this. I've floated around in some Discord servers before. That's how I know you guys. Yeah. And I've just kind of noticed this. If they don't come out and say it, it's just the IDW as a concept is 5 years old now. And a lot of people actually thought something was going to materialize and happen, and then it didn't. And then a lot of these we'll say the founding fathers of the IDW, right? Like the people I just named kind of split up, and some of them took a turn for the worst. And it's very much a revolving door kind of thing. We can't necessarily be sure anyone can stay in. And so part of what I've tried to, part of what I tried to do by making this is well, can we have to the extent that it's possible for something that like the IDW to have an institution that allows it to manifest some things for a change? Let's try and do that. And so just to sort of to answer what's the purpose of our organization, that's it.
Okay.
I have a million questions, but I want to say hi to Roenn.
Yeah, definitely.
One of
Roenn?
our favorite, he might be my favorite leftist. Welcome.
Hey guys, how are y'all doing? Long time no see.
I like the pronoun shout out there.
Thank you. Those are my official ones. So I'll be very triggered if y'all don't use them.
Yeah, I like
those I only use the daddy and papa pronouns for Jordan Peterson. Okay, you can't have them.
That's fair, actually. That's totally allowed.
Hey Jeff, you're my favorite gay autistic Satanist.
Oh, that makes me feel.
We actually had Paul of the comments for a minute. I don't know if you guys saw that, but
I did. I noticed that.
Well, Chris, you had some questions for Joe earlier before we hopped on the stream. We could start there.
He started with the main question I asked, which was what was the overall thrust of the organization, what was his goals, and I think he kind of covered some of that. I really know what you mean by I guess I am still wondering, in a more succinct way, so what do you consider your organization to be? Is it you guys are there to fight for the people in the intellectual dark web? Is it fight against cancel culture? You're there to in a sentence, if you could do it in a sentence, what would you say the
mission statement
of the mission statement of the IDW community is?
I would say it is to protect and promote free dialogue in the United States, since that's technically what we have to focus on as a 501c3. But yeah, I'd say countering cancel culture is completely consistent with that, and ultimately long term, I think that'll be necessary. We're going to have to figure out a way to how do we counter that?
Yeah,
that was my question: is how do you counter that?
I mean, there's a lot of layers to it. There are some that our organization would be in a position, especially given enough time and resources, to do it as a nonprofit. I think most of those would probably be on where it's an economic or a financial weapon against people. The way I look at it is, essentially it's there's a lot of income inequality in the United States. There's a decline in unions. A lot of after the Tea Party won a lot of state governments, they rolled back some protections for workers in the workplace, and this does not time well with the rise of the kind of left-wing identity politics that's come to dominate corporate culture in the years just after that. And this all also happens right after the Great Recession as well, when a lot of people had lost their careers and they're displaced. And so, a lot of norms for the American worker changed over the last 15 years or so. And what cancel culture does, especially where it hits the non-celebrities, I think most severely, is it uses the worst parts, like the worst parts of American capitalism, and the fact that you don't reliably have a union rep maybe to intercede for you, for example, like you might have in a different era, or similar mechanisms, to sort of um, put a metaphorical gun to your head and essentially force you to comply with something, or you lose your livelihood over it. And again, part of what's really bad about it is that the things that can cause someone to be canceled may be things that aren't true, or even if there's true, they're only kind of true. And then to the extent that they are true, is it the place of an employer to stick their fingers into things that happen in a person's personal life, right?
Right. Yeah.
Nobody I think gets canceled really for something that happens outside of work. If it's something that happened at work and they're not happy with it and you lose your job, that's getting fired. But if it's something that you just did on social media, and that affects you in your own life, it's like, why should that be a thing, right? It's very weird too, is because I do think there are right-wing versions of cancel culture, but where we really became aware of it is when it was done by the left. And the weird thing is, when it happens as a result of people to the left, it's apparently this very cynical thing where they know what's bad about capitalism. They know what they're doing to people when they cancel them and make them unemployable, when they call them and ask for them to be fired and try to make it so they can't get hired anywhere else again. They know what they're subjecting people to. Like, they're not just affecting that individual, but like, if this person has a family, that's the income for the family. If they have a healthcare plan, the spouse and the children are losing their healthcare with this. It's very odd that people who would believe in Medicare for all would be so quick to just drastically reduce people's standards of living over something that was apparently controversial. And this is not good for essentially like what people do on social media and in other platforms, and just in general, is they're engaging in free speech. And we're the internet and a lot of other things in our society developed at such a quick pace that we have the ability to completely undermine free speech as a value in the United States, like faster than we realized we were getting to that point. It happened so quickly. We're like, oh, we have the power to just we don't need to worry about the government undermining free speech anymore. We can just go around the government, or sometimes the government will just get companies to go along with it. They'll ask social media websites or news websites to take things down. There's things where they can threaten their essentially their license to function as a business.
Right. Yeah.
And so it allows them to get around the First Amendment. And so even if we focus on, is it really proper for employers to meddle in people's private lives? And again, you would not expect that the left would be okay with making that a norm. There's also the ways where can government basically backdoor the First Amendment by doing this, by bullying companies. We've seen instances over the years where it's either suggested that they did that, or very clear that was attempted. And we don't know how much further these things could develop, but that things have gotten this far is the concern. And do we want to let them get worse? And even if they don't get worse, a lot of what happens right now is pretty bad.
Are you planning on doing this like legal advocacy, or is it like media watchdog type stuff, or like what? How do you see like that playing out? You have like lawyers or something like that, or
so we have to start out much more modest and with I think low hanging fruit. Yeah, low hanging fruit that can get us going forward. So I think long term, that's the kind of thing that we would want to support, is provide legal advocacy for folks.
Right.
I know that there's a group called FIRE that already does that quite a bit. And so anything that we don't do, I mean, we can also help other organizations that might be filling a similar void. One thing I really want to focus on right now is more so on the economic side of things. Part of why I was able to actually leave my job and start doing this full time is, I learned a lot about finance and investing. I spent the last few years working hard, doing overtime when I could, saving like a dog, slashing my expenses as much as I could so that I could, build up my assets and then have passive income on which I can live. And that's part of what's making this possible. I'm not going into this with the expectation that I'm going to have a huge windfall of money as the CEO of this organization. I'm definitely taking a pay cut doing this. And
It's very admirable. I really do think so.
but part of why I'm able to do that is, I'm in a position to walk because I learned about these things. I came to understand them. One thing I've noticed in communities like the IDW is that there's a lot of like misconceptions or skepticism about the way things work in finance and investing. Understandably, given that we live in a post 2008 recession type of world, where a lot of folks who did criminal things through financial markets did not go to jail for it, and then got a bailout instead. And then there was the more recent thing with like the GameStop squeeze with Robinhood and stuff, where things weren't handled well there. But I mean, the essence of it is like, you look at someone like J.K. Rowling, right? They've tried to cancel her, they haven't quite done it. And why is that? Well, it's because she's not just a successful author, but she's the most successful author, financially speaking, of all time
In history, yeah.
right. And so she has an asset that produces cash flow, and she has some people call this like fuck you money. I don't think she really uses it to do that to folks, but like it does give her that benefit, and her asset is so in demand. It produces so much cash that even if she is unpopular, like no one can really drop her, right? No one. Harry Potter brings in too much money that nobody wants to pull the plug on that, even if people are accusing J.K. Rowling of being transphobic. But like, you can think very easily, like even a best-selling author who topped lists, at least a few times, could have their career completely erased by that, and there's no income for them. So the question is, how do we make that something that's more attainable for the average person? Obviously, we can't all become billionaires, but how we get it to the point where people are financially secure, and they're effectively cancel proof, at least in that sense. I understand there's more layers to it, like the social and cultural aspect, but I would say probably 70% of what cancel culture is that makes it so scary to folks is the financial side. It's, will I have a place to live? Will my children have a place to live? How are we going to feed ourselves? That's the real danger of it. And it's the kind of thing that makes people fall in line in a way that, like, you get. I put it like, what we're living right now is like, it's like the intersection of two Arthur Miller plays. I'll let you guess which two.
Death of a Salesman.
Death of a Salesman. Yeah, I was going to say that one, but that's the only one I can think of right now.
Did he write Night of the Iguana?
The Crucible.
The Crucible.
Death of a Salesman and Crucible.
Sure.
Yes. So, have a context where people are in like a witch hunt mentality. They think there's a danger there that isn't real. They're overreacting to it. And the people who know it's bullshit fall in the line anyway. And then, just make John Proctor the working man who's been unappreciated his whole career and not gotten his fair share. And if you're familiar with how Death of a Salesman ends, right? He confronts he does die, but right before that, he confronts the son of the owner, and he had an agreement with the father who was running the business that like one day he would become a part owner in it. But then the father dies, the son inherits the business. Son has no intention of keeping that promise. And that's the thing there. It's like, do you own the means of production or not? And so you might say, one way we can do it is we can teach people who can take their savings to use what they're able to hold on to essentially get the means of production. So one of my initial, this is one of the maiden projects is, I've made some lessons. Some of them are on YouTube already. You can look them up if you want to see.
I'll put your in the description too.
Yeah. They're called the financial freedom lessons, and just intended to break down how investing works, how different types of investments work, to kind of get that ball rolling. Long term, it would be cool if we were a thriving organization, if we could provide material financial support to people who find themselves in that kind of a pinch. Obviously, we'd have to do it with some with a critical eye, because again, if we're going to make the point that people should be willing to distinguish between people who get canceled unfairly and people who had it coming, like people who are actual child rapists, for example. Some celebrities have been canceled because of that. And then, of course, in general, people who aren't celebrities become unpopular forever for that. And I would say that's largely deserved. But then, we want to differentiate between the two. And
of course, yeah.
And so, and then, of course, and then when we differentiate, even just realize, well, how bad is what happened to you? What happened? Or like, even if we agree that it was kind of bad, how much would we want to help you? Those are things that we'll want to figure out long term. But, for right now, some of it's going to be simple. It's just going to be focusing on things that are educational in nature, to let people know, here's what's already in front of you that you can use. And I know, because I have done it. I would have liked to have gotten a bit more, but it's enough that I was able to make the jump. If you're willing to be frugal enough, and you really understand how these things work, it can help. Now, just so folks know, like, I did work at Fidelity Investments as an investment advisory representative for a bit. I had learned quite a bit about investing before that, but I got some more formal stuff there to understand that helped sharpen my edges a bit. And I worked there for about a year before I left. That was in the spring. And then I had another job temporarily after that before I started doing this. So what I noticed with a lot of I think this is something where people shoot themselves in the foot, and it's something that makes it easier for them to be preyed on by mainstream institutions, is that they're so afraid to get involved in investing because they see it as all like this scam or this thing that will always be manipulated against them. Again, because of things like 2009 or like what happened with the GameStop squeeze. But realistically, if you want to be financially secure, you have to be an owner of the means of production, and that's the society in which we live. Now, don't necessarily think that's the ideal society. I'm not saying it's great that it's capitalism rules the day. We can have a separate discussion about that. But given that that's where we live, it's not going anywhere. It's absolutely not going. If there was a chance that any of it could change, the Democrats needed to nominate Bernie in 2016, and for a variety of reasons, they said no. So,
Rowan, I see you bobbing your little head there. I want to get your thoughts on this because I know you're interested in the economic aspects of things, but also you're working on a video too, right? Speaking of freedom of speech, you're gonna take down Trump.
Yeah, I am actually. I'm working on a video about Trump's labor history and kind of his entire history working with unions and the working class, just to kind of put it the test. Is he actually an economic populist? I don't believe he is, and that's cool, Joe, to hear you say. Because whenever I think about the intellectual dark web, I picture sort of a defense of more of like a libertarian view of economics. More from people like Dave Rubin or people like Ben Shapiro. Who I guess wasn't necessarily a direct IDW member, but he was kind of associated with that, right? So, but it like the kind of rhetoric that you're using almost sounds sort of like almost like quasi like socialist in a way. Where do you kind of fall economically? I'm curious.
I guess it's hard for me to say now, because when you say where I fall economically, I guess you mean on the economic dimension of the political spectrum, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It's hard for me to say, because at this point I've just removed myself from politics. Like I said, I used to be active in the Democratic Party, and I'm not anymore. I'm not registered with the Democratic Party. I no longer vote. I feel like I don't have any stake in American elections as they currently exist. So at this point, I'm apolitical, just officially and practically, in terms of I don't vote for anyone. I don't contribute to campaigns anymore. I won't canvass for anyone anymore unless somebody really amazing showed up. But I'm not holding my breath anymore. But if you want to know my history, I was a Bernie supporter in 2016. Was like a Yang and Bernie supporter in 2020. Actually wrote in Bernie in my November ballot in 2016. And I did that in North Carolina in a swing state. So I had no hesitation. Yeah, no, I said, I don't care if, like, I'm voting for who I want to be president. And at this point, though, again, I'm not really interested in that stuff. It was some lessons learned then. But obviously there are certain consistent values that carry over from then to here, where obviously I cared about something like cancel culture. And there was obviously there's a mismatch for me where I see things as being egregious. Like, how can you treat the working man like this, even if he's kind of an asshole sometimes? Like, even if we give some of the cancellation defense, like, this guy was kind of an asshole, is it worth it to destroy his whole life? This seems completely inconsistent with the kind of economic, like, especially when we know we're using the most vicious and cutthroat part of capitalism, right? Like, we're taking the profit incentives, we're turning someone's boss against them. Like, well, we've got to throw this guy under the bus, or we won't make profits anymore. We won't make sales, people. It's just, and really, it's a terrible thing to put the bosses in, because I'm sure a lot of managers don't want to fire some of their employees, and they feel like they're between a rock and a hard place. And so it's a terrible thing for them too. Like, it's probably going to make, like, to any managers who had to go through that, especially if it was an employee that they were on really good terms up to that point, it probably leaves a bad taste. It probably spoils their career for them after that as well. And it's, just to think about, like, it's not just the person who gets canceled that it's affected, but it's just like, imagine that, you were in the Salem witch trials and you weren't one of the targeted, but you helped in the pile-on. And within a very short time after the Salem witch trials, everyone reflected on it and said, this was totally stupid, right? So imagine how you feel the rest of your life living in Salem, Massachusetts at that time, knowing that you just threw your fellow townsfolk under the bus. They were executed. And it was all because you were too cowardly to stand up for folks.
And it's one of those things where even if they were witches, right, setting that precedent just lets them burn anybody, really. I mean,
exactly.
Like, setting that precedent in the media, it doesn't even matter if, like, that one guy really was an asshole. You've opened the floodgates now. So, like, it's, and it doesn't really take much more than, like, whenever they print the headline that might be a lie, when they print the retraction, it's on the last page of the newspaper at the very bottom. And
nobody cares about the retraction. Like,
exactly.
a meaningful retraction is, oh, it was wrong. And, like, especially if you were part of the news source that helped ruin that person's life, like the initial story, like, here's a check for your troubles, right? But no one's going to do that.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But to Roenn, I think that essentially answered your question, even if I didn't put an exact label on it about like, where I fall.
Yeah, for sure. And that just real quick, that kind of reminds me of what I think Sam Harris has called the bullshit asymmetry principle, that it takes infinitely more energy to refute bullshit than it does to create it. And so there does seem to be this kind of natural law where whenever, like, sensationalized things blow up, even if it's a false story, it'll get like 20,000 retweets. And then later, whenever they apologize, that gets like 2,000. So there's just not as much eyeballs on stuff like that. Yeah, if that.
Yeah.
And I think of people getting canceled, and not, big people, kind of like you said, but even just everyday people at random jobs getting caught on, like, video or something. And it turns into this blood sports kind of thing where I think they cease to see that person as an individual with, like, thoughts and feelings and an experience, and more of just a public hanging to enjoy. And, to be clear, I mean, I think that public shame serves as a social control mechanism, right? And so I support it in certain cases. Like, when I look at a person like Nick Fuentes, I'm okay with that guy being publicly shamed and having his life be very hard because of just how overtly horrible and hateful he is, and how he makes it his entire life's mission to just talk about how evil Jews are. That's a guy who, if the public decides, hey, we're going to kind of blacklist this guy, and like everywhere he goes, we're going to, like, shout him down as, like, Nazi or whatever, I'm okay with that. The problem is whenever that kind of stuff, that bar gets lower than applied to just standard kind of conservatives or like edgy teenagers making jokes in group chats and stuff, and then getting like kicked out of colleges. Like I've seen that, and that stuff to me is like not okay at all.
Like the girl that made the joke when she was getting a plane going to Africa, and by the time she got off the plane, her entire life was ruined.
Yeah.
It wasn't even that terribly offensive a joke, and it wasn't funny.
It's definitely like a Rick and Morty type of joke, right? It just is kind of black grotesque humor, but like, what did she actually do? And that's the thing. It's people being offensive rather often. They didn't even do anything. She said, "Hope I don't get AIDS." Oh no, don't worry about it. I'm white, right? That was like basically the joke. That was it. I mean, it's not funny. But it's not that terribly offensive, really. I never understood that one.
They're looking for the mob's always looking for a scapegoat, a victim. And Roenn, once you open the door to being okay with Nick Fuentes, you're opening the door to Evergreen, and you're opening the door for someone justifying doing it to you as well.
Well, so here's the thing, though, is that I don't like to look at things in absolutes like that. Like we can never ever publicly shame anybody. Right. It's like clearly there has to be a line somewhere where it's like, how are you going to stop people from publicly shaming people? Because it's such a social phenomenon that we do to people that we deem as egregious or far beyond kind of our bounds of acceptable behavior. And I don't know any way to, aside from just trying to socially discourage it, I don't know of any way to stop that from happening. And maybe it would be good to stop it from happening in the cases, kind of like y'all are talking about. There's some people where it's kind of like if they do.
Part of my hope is that
I'm just pointing out that once you open that door, the consequences that you're opening, and the way you stop it is to not participate in it. So like forbear shaming Nick Fuentes, as tempting as it is, and then you're one individual that has advanced.
You're kind of just advertising for him too. To be honest, like the shaming doesn't really hurt.
Just ignore him.
Yeah, ignoring him would be far more effective than shaming him, because shaming him just gives him more fame. I mean, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think it should be.
Well, that certainly worked for Trump.
To be fair, I mean, you should ignore people. But then if and when they become relevant, they should be met with some level of public scorn if they're a person who is worthy of that kind of scorn. I don't know that that's a door that we can – I don't think I'm opening a door because I don't think that's a door that we can close at all. I mean, how do you stop
– Well, you can as an individual.
From voicing – that they don't like people. I mean, because I will voice I don't like Nick Fuentes, and I'll say that I think that he is, is a neo-Nazi. I'll say that I think he's a horrible person.
I don't like him either.
I'm not going to go out of my way.
It's different than the scenario you painted of him, like going out in public and being shamed everywhere and not being able to.
No, not just when he's walking in public, but I mean, like if he's going to like speak somewhere, like if there's something happening where there is like, or you're a college and his movement like AFPAC will like reach out to you and say, hey, can Nick speak at your university? I feel like you can be like, absolutely not. Like, I don't want that kind of, thing to be like broadcast and platformed.
I'm hearing an echo. Does someone have their YouTube not muted?
I have headphones in.
I have headphones as well.
I have headphones as well, so I don't know.
Maybe I should maybe it's me, but I don't even have my YouTube on.
It's somebody.
I'll switch to headphones just to see if it stops it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying, Roenn. I mean, I see what you're saying, and I agree. Any private institution absolutely has the right to refuse, like, let them speak there or whatever. Although I do think that even though I'm not a huge fan of Bill Maher's like rejoinder about the best disinfectant is sunshine a lot of times works a lot better. A lot of times when people actually hear these people's speech, they don't typically win that many new converts. They usually embarrass themselves. Look at like Milo recently. He did that debate with Destiny, and he just like beclowned himself. I mean, I think that happens more often than I don't know. I just don't think public shaming. I think it feels good for the people doing the shaming. And that's the main reason they defend it. I don't think it really does anything to the people you're trying to like get out of society. You're trying to like, in fact, it emboldens them more. It makes them feel like now they're persecuted. Now that there's proof, they have done something that's worth noted. Like the Matrix is after them. Like your Andrew Tates and whatnot. Like they do something illegal. Now then you can get rid of them. But other than that, I just don't see the value in it.
I'm still hearing it. Yeah, there's like barbaric and savage ways of dealing with something, and there's more civilized ways of dealing with it. And I associate shame with social savagery.
So Rowan, I have
At
a
least on
theory
that scale.
about why this kind of social shame thing sort of happens. It's kind of just a general theory beyond that about like why things are the way they are, but I think the social shame is like a salient example because, again, I mentioned like there's a similarity to the Crucible, right? And what are very strict religious societies known for? They're known for the social shaming element. Part of why they do it is some of it is just our apish instinct to feel powerful, like we have social status. But some of it is also just from the belief like the social shaming actually has some kind of impact, right? If you socially shame someone in a, let's say, a puritanical religion, you think that you're going to make it so that, more people go to heaven and less people go to hell as a result of that. And that's a good thing. So that's part of why people do it. Like if people go back and think, why did I, do that person? I was doing what God tells us to do so we can go to heaven and have eternal bliss. Obviously, a lot of people now, especially people on the left doing social shaming, are not very religious. Many of them are outright atheists. And some of this is I think, a consequence of two things. It's one more recently, there was the new atheism movement, which I kind of see as sort of like the precursor to the IDW in many ways. The new atheism movement was in many ways a response to 9/11 being a religiously motivated attack, and even though it was the terrorists were Muslim, it opened the door for just a lot of people to really start saying, "Hey, why are we religious? Why do we believe these things?" And are we really so different? Is it really so crazy that we could have Christian terrorists or just do other similarly bad things? There were bad things happening at the time, like at the time of 9/11. Some states it was criminal to engage in consensual sodomy. You would actually be taken out of your home at night if you're having gay sex. That was on the books in Georgia and Texas, and finally struck down by the court in 2003. It's crazy to think it was that recent, but
yeah, that's crazy. I didn't even know that.
Nobody paid attention to it.
That is true.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody actually got arrested for it.
I mean,
but yeah, it was there. It was
some people
Texas
did.
versus Lawrence.
Some people did. The reason it was a case in the court is some people did, and they had legal standing to contest it. So, yeah, so it's like talk about getting canceled, right? I mean, you're just gay.
Ridiculous.
But so a lot of people question that, and the effect of new atheism is very pronounced, I think, on a lot of millennials who were coming of age at this time. Is that a lot of them became atheists in droves, and I know a lot of them used to be very conservative religious people because I met people. I was active in a secular club when I was in college, and people. I did not have this upbringing. I had a pretty secular upbringing. My parents weren't atheists, or they didn't raise me atheist, but we did not go to church every Sunday. We did not do prayer and stuff. Very different. I grew up in rural North Carolina. It was an unusual upbringing, let me tell you. But most kids did, and I talked to a lot of folks. Like I talked to a guy who could even recall speaking in tongues as a teenager. And talking to him in college, and eventually he just realized, oh wait, I was just being crazy. I was fooling myself to the point that I was speaking in tongues in church. And so a lot of folks have talked about like there's like a meaning crisis. People don't know how to feel meaningful anymore when their concept of reality and the values that were tied to that from religion no longer hold. And so what a lot of folks did, I think more people who are more to the left of new atheism, is they went into this social justice stuff. And there's a lot of heroes we have from this more, it's like a more secular activist type of hero. So we look at folks like Martin Luther King. He's like the Jesus of what I see as like being the social justice type of ideology. Even if that's not what he tried to do, he's sort of been put into that role by them. They think they're just doing what MLK did. And then on the journalism side, say it's a similar thing with what Woodward and Bernstein did with Watergate. Like they took journalism to this romantic level that it's been at ever since. And every journalist since has tried to be the next Woodward or Bernstein and catch something or expose something. And so you have these, these sort of prophetic figures that emerged in the latter half of the 20th century. And then right after that new atheist movement, and they sort of have filled this void. And what we see with a lot of the social shaming and cancel culture, and why it feels a lot like being in a puritanical religion, is that it's filling that same void for folks. For folks who did not take that turn, I think for a lot of folks who went through new atheism, but they didn't have this meaning crisis, they're like, I'm not at crisis because I don't have a spiritual way of making meaning anymore. I think a lot of those folks ended up going into the IDW. I don't think it's an accident that Sam Harris was, involved in the IDW, and also one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, as they were called during the days of New Atheism. He held that role along with Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, and Daniel Dennett, for folks who remember those names.
Rest in peace, Hitch. He was a good man. I very much enjoyed that guy.
Yes.
I've enjoyed Christopher Hitchens stuff too, even though I don't particularly think he was quite as much of a genius as some people make him out to be, but I do think he was a really good writer, and I enjoy a lot of his work.
Yeah, and I just want to make clear, I mean, whenever I say that I'm in some instances like shaming people is okay, I'm not thinking of like this fervent like marching in the streets like with this obsessive
no, you're talking like what Jordan Peterson meant when he said enforced monogamy. What he meant is like, I'm having an affair, cheating on my wife, and you say, don't do that, you asshole, right?
Yeah, I mean, because just in its most basic sense, I mean, to shame somebody is just to cast a moral judgment upon them and to just let them know, like, I think that what you are doing is wrong. I think you are a bad person. That can inflict a feeling of shame on people. Right now, there's a dial of how intense we kind of bring that up and how much we chase people down to shame them. But that act of casting judgment or guilt upon people, that's just part of the human condition. I mean, we're never going to get rid of that. It's a good thing. I mean, it's just that when it goes too far and when its victims are unjustly chased down and doxxed and fired from jobs, there's just a version of it that gets excessive I don't like. But kind of to your point, Jeff, I just think that we can't eradicate that phenomenon entirely. We just have to kind of temper it. And I do think that it in the kind of stuff that whenever y'all talk about cancel culture, I know the kind of thing you're talking about, and I don't like that stuff either. But again, then I see things like it does work. Like, I think people they can feel like they're being unfairly maligned, that they can feel emboldened to kind of double down on their beliefs, but also the other side of it is that it can also kind of intimidate people into feeling like, I am very much on the outside of what my entire culture thinks is okay. And I like if you're an active neo-Nazi with a swastika tattooed on your forehead, you're probably going to feel some sense of like social shame. Like whenever you go out, people see you, and that's a good thing. I feel like if you're a person like that,
I disagree. I think the guy that has a swastika on his forehead, he knows that people are going to.
I think he's pretty shame-proof,
and he's trying to provoke them. Like, the only thing you're doing when you try to shame that guy is you're giving him the attention he wants. Nobody puts a swastika.
Yeah, but again, I'm not talking about actively going out of your way to like point at him and like whatever, but just him knowing that almost everybody he encounters is going to think that he is like a bad person and that his beliefs aren't okay. That's probably that's better than him thinking. That's better than him thinking that everybody thinks that what he believes is awesome, right? Like,
I don't think you care. As somebody who's pretty immune to shame, we don't care. Like, so if whatever you think you're accomplishing with the shame on those particular people, it's not having the effect that it might have on you if it happened to you. The psychology is completely different.
The only people it's really affecting are the people that might employ that person, that might, provide them to have a life, and like those people might be therefore socially shamed and firing them or taking away their livelihood. So maybe that's fair. I don't know, but the echo back.
Yeah, I don't know. And so even whenever I mute my camera or whenever I mute my mic, it's still going. So I don't think
you hear it too.
Mm-hmm.
How can we? Oh, is it you? Because you don't have headphones. I thought we all had headphones.
He's got an
earpiece. Oh, you do have headphones. How can we be echoing if we all have headphones?
Yeah, I don't.
I genuinely have no idea.
I can.
I don't hear an echo.
I don't know what's going
on. It's like a football stadium announcer.
I only don't hear the echo when Joe speaks, though. He's the only one that doesn't seem to like create the echo. I don't get it. I'm not sure what's going
on. Jeff, can you mute yourself for just a second?
Yeah.
And then I want to talk and see. I still hear the echo.
Hmm.
Okay, Chris, can you mute yourself? Testing, 1, 2, 3. I still hear the echo.
Hear it.
Joe. Testing, 1, 2, 3.
It's Joe.
It's Joe.
Shame.
Shame. Public shaming. That's weird. I don't know why. Unless your headphones are just so loud and they're so close to your mic that it's just like picking it up for your headset. Maybe I don't know.
It's very slight echo. It's not really pronounced.
It's the first time I've had that problem.
Yeah, it wasn't doing it earlier tonight.
It's not that noticeable.
When we were on the other call, it wasn't doing that. So
yeah, that's odd. Well, I turned the volume down on my headset, so hopefully it won't keep getting picked up.
It sounds fine now.
You definitely reduced it to the point where it's negligible. So
yeah, I'm just worried about it picking it up for viewers that might be watching later.
Here,
okay.
Let me, Jeff. So I wonder if I can phrase this in a way that if you can agree with a version of what I'm saying. Like you think that like pedophiles are bad, right? Like I know that's a belief that you hold.
People that act on their pedophilia. I'm willing to make allowances for the condition of pedophilia,
yeah, so
but not the behavior.
Yeah, so if you were a child molester, that's
Yes.
like bad. That's a wrong thing to do. And maybe, you wouldn't be for like every time they march down the street, we like point at them and go like child molester, but they are aware that the thing that they are doing in the eyes of most people is bad and is wrong. And you would say that's probably a good thing that they know that, right?
It's also illegal and they'll go to jail for it. So there's already a social system built in to punish those people. I think the problem comes in when it's something more like something that's not actionable, like beliefs or something like that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not for the maps or anything like that. But I mean, I just don't see that social shaming has that much value. I'm not saying that it doesn't have any value. I just don't think it has very much.
It's cultural. They have shame cultures and guilt cultures. So people that grew up in a shame culture, it might, but that's not everybody.
Right.
Well, Roenn, to your point, I would say I think you're basically right. Like, it's interesting that it's called cancel culture, right? Obviously, things got canceled before. It was not unheard of, like in the 90s, for example, that if a show was unpopular,
to the degree that it's been happening.
Right, but if like a show was unpopular, maybe this unpopularity was due to something controversial that happened, it would get canceled, right? The fact that we call it cancel culture, right? It's not just that things still get canceled. We've built a culture around it now. And I think that's the issue there. If we still had cancellations, and it wasn't something like it's this culture that we have built around it, I don't know that we'd be feeling the way we do. At least not about this. We'd have some other problem.
Yeah,
it's like 75% based in X or Twitter or whatever, than it is too, because that's where it really came from, was those brigades of people that would like go on campaigns to try to like ruin that person's life.
Yeah, the people on Twitter that'll try to dox people and like track them down through like screenshots and weird shit, like find their employer. No, I mean like stuff like that. Again, that's just the degree and intensity of the human phenomenon of casting judgment upon people, taken to like a ridiculous extreme, again, and I am against that stuff. I just think that I'm not against the idea of ever doing that to anybody for any reason, because I do think that it has a place. And against like really, really bad and shitty people and movements, it does have an effect where it will embolden them, but it does intimidate people into silence sometimes. And that can be used for very bad things. But also sometimes people should feel intimidated into silence. I don't know. Like, again, if you are actively like a neo-Nazi, that's just
those are bully tactics to me. And I'm just generally against bully tactics. But if you're going to use them, who decides when they're warranted or not? Who gets to decide what values are justified?
The culture just kind of like mediates that. And I'm saying that I would want it to be where the people that I don't want that to happen to them don't have it happen to them. But if we're not going to legislate it, then all we're talking about here is like kind of what we wish people in aggregate would do. And what I wish people would do is just, not do it to people that don't deserve it.
Yeah, but that's so subjective. Like there's something that sounds illiberal about that to me.
It is very subjective. I mean, because there's no objective standard. I mean, I don't believe that morals are objective. So it is just going to come down to people's judgment and kind of which.
But you're making it like you want it used for things you think it should be used on, but that opens the door, like I said, for other people who have different values to say, well, I think
but
Roenn.
Jeff, I mean, the door's already open though, because those people would already do it. You know what I'm saying? It's like, so here's a broader point so I used to be really big on this idea of like everything that we do has to be completely 100% like do unto others as we would have them do unto us in this like universal sense. And I don't necessarily believe that anymore, because I think that like we should be fair to people who are willing to be fair to us. Like if we're willing to coexist with people and play a game, you know, in the Jordan Peterson sense, and kind of coexist in a pro-social, peaceful way, then we enter this reciprocal kind of contract of morality. But if people are outside of those bounds and they believe things that are so egregious that they would not coexist peacefully with us, then I don't believe that those people deserve to be treated in a way that is reciprocal or fair, because they would do that same thing to us. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, if that makes sense. Like I would never do those tactics or wish that upon anybody who is like a normal, decent person who is willing to coexist with other people, because that's what reciprocal altruism is. I'm talking about the people that are outside of that framework. People like Nick Fuentes, who, if they came to power, they would deport minorities by force. I mean, they would, you know, just the kind of world they would build. I mean, they would outlaw sodomy. I mean, they would do horrible things. And for those kinds of people, the rules of that game don't apply to them, because we're not playing the same game, you know?
Let me think on that.
Sure.
But
That's fine.
What I want to say, like someone else, like if someone were to adopt your position, they would have a different bar than you might have that could get, like, they may draw the lines a little more broader than you would, and it could get misused against you.
Yeah, it might, but it's already going to get used against me by people, and me not doing it is not going to make other people that don't like me not do it to me, you know? So
you're also just opening the door to what happens to a lot of people, which is just lie. And they just make up something about you. Everyone jumps on board and they shame and destroy your life for something that absolutely didn't happen. And just by being okay with this concept, you're allowing that to happen, whether you like it or not. I mean, maybe that's acceptable. Maybe that's an acceptable
risk. What concept are you saying that I'm okay with that might allow that to happen? To
just the general idea of shaming, like we're talking the canceling, shaming type idea that you're saying you think is okay in certain circumstances. Just by saying it's okay in those circumstances just means that's those are the kind of lies that people have to tell in order to cancel or shame someone.
Yeah, well,
it doesn't even matter if they did
it. Lie about people. I don't want anybody to lie about anybody. But
well, yeah, of course you don't. But
even if I sat here and said that I was totally against anybody shaming anybody ever again, that's not going to stop anybody out there from shaming anybody. So
I just think it's a bad principle.
You could make the same argument with violence or aggression. Like other people are going to be violent, so
fair enough.
Therefore, I condone violence.
Well, I condone violence in self-defense, kind of like I condone shaming in a self-defense, I guess, against people that are willing to do like horrible things to you. Like, again, my bar is set at people that are outside the frame of like liberalism, people that don't really care about democracy. They don't really care about things like civil rights. They don't care. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about people that make edgy jokes in the workplace. I'm in a political framework, if that makes my viewpoint make a bit more sense. Like, I'm purely talking about like when it comes down to preserving our culture and preserving democracy, preserving a cohesive sense of trust and a way to make this game that we're trying to play work. The people that are outside of that game that want to destroy it cannot be allowed inside of it. And so the rules of how we treat people in that fair way inside the game don't apply to people that are outside of it. That's kind of the
I agree with that part, like setting bounds on who's in the game and not. I'm not sure if I agree with shaming as a tactic, but I'm also trying to think if I use it, like, do I try to shame it, or do I try to shame the woke, or do I try to shame people I disagree? I mean, I'm ugly and I talk ugly and hateful about them, and I make fun of them and I mock them. So maybe that's a form of trying to shame them. But my intention is not to kind of moral shaming you're talking about.
there's nothing wrong with talking shit or shaming ideas. I think when it comes down to individual people, that's where I get a problem with it, because we don't really talk about.
Yeah, I don't think. I guess maybe it's just we just the way we grew up or temperamentally. I don't feel good about making people feel bad about themselves or
like
something they've
anybody.
done.
I have no problem with making them feel bad about their ideas, but not specifically targeting the people. There's
kind of twisting the knife.
Like,
if they
calling out pedophilia is fine. Calling out that pedophile right there, that's where the problem comes in. You know?
Yeah, but wouldn't we only call out the pedophile insofar that they molested a kid? Like, that's kind of the thing, right?
Well,
so it's like
yeah,
we
they
do
have to
call out
actually
people,
announce themselves to their neighborhood.
Yeah, like I think that if we ever like call out people or even just voice a judgment about them publicly, because that's kind of what shaming is in a lesser form. It is just any time that we pass a judgment on anybody in a public space, people are going to see that, and that's going to produce a sense of this eye of judgment upon that person. Like, that is kind of that is a form of public shaming, albeit not very aggressive. That's still what that is. And I just think that like it's okay to target people, but not for who they are, but for a thing that they have done. That's where I don't think anybody should ever feel shame or feel bad about who they are. It's only about specific things that they have done or said that are horrible or egregious. And there also should be a path back. I mean, there needs to be a path of like redemption, even for people that do horrible things to kind of come back. Well, not for everybody, you know, but
I think there's a distinction I'm noticing between judging and shaming. I have no problem judging. Shaming just seems to take it to an extra level that has a certain cruelty to it. That
help me understand. Okay, so whenever you're talking about shaming, then what do you mean when you say that?
Well, like
I mean, more like the campaigns against people,
trying to make someone feel bad about
trying to go for their employers and telling people they need to be fired, and trying to create a public environment that makes it impossible for that person to live. That's what I'm talking about. And maybe there's a point to be made that when someone has voluntarily made themselves into a public figure, if you're a public figure, you know, if you're Dylan Mulvaney or something, right? If you're someone who's just kind of beclowning themselves on a regular basis, then, you know, maybe it's fair for that person to be publicly mocked by people, by comedians and everybody else, just because, like, you know, they're the ones putting themselves out there. They're putting on display. They're opening themselves up to comment. Whenever it's a more of a private citizen, someone who's not really attempting to be a public figure in that way, maybe that's where I have it. I don't know. I haven't really thought about it like that, but like it's an interesting aspect.
This is actually showing up in some of our communities right now. We have some trolls that are being very not pro-social, and I've mocked them, I've insulted them, I've tried to make them go away and like feel at least unpleasant enough to go away, but I'm not trying to like destroy their.
We're trying to get them away from our community. We're not trying to.
Yeah, I'm definitely trying to draw the boundary that you're talking about by using some of these tactics.
Sure.
But I'm not trying to like make them feel like shit about themselves or make them. There's something that I didn't grow up with a lot of shame. It doesn't work on me. People tried it on me my whole life. It doesn't do anything. So people that grew up in shame or that shame affects, I think it creates a certain feeling in the person that has very negative consequences in their psyche above and beyond just the purpose of using it to kind of gatekeep a community.
Okay. No, I mean, that makes sense. Like, I don't support cruelty. I don't support going after people and trying to psychologically make them like hate themselves. I mean, I'm not for that. The only thing that I am saying that I am for, maybe shame isn't even the right word, that I am for us being able to publicly cast negative judgments upon certain people and just kind of like make it known that we are not okay with them and that what they are doing is like bad and wrong and they're not welcome in our circles. Like, that kind of thing is just natural. That is okay. And the way that I see cancel culture is just that taken to this aggressive extreme point where you're chasing people down, and goes beyond just a thing they did. It becomes a witch hunt attacking them for like the substance of who they are at a deep level. And it is an excessive punishment that doesn't fit the crime of what they did.
And the behavior that's included in it becomes like less and less egregious. It expands to the most like little, the tiniest little micro behavior. So it gets abused.
So, yes. Guys, I don't want to cut this discussion too short, but I will be needing to hop out in about 10 minutes. So
okay,
well, let's let you have the floor so you can wrap up with any thoughts or you want to say or anything about your project. How can people find out more? Do you have a website?
We don't have a functioning website yet. We have a domain, but we need to actually get some things on it. I would say, on the Intellectual Dark Web subreddit, I'm going to make a post that's going to be a broader announcement. There's a couple other things I want to get ready first to include on that before I do. But so folks can go to our Intellectual Dark Web. You can check Wednesday night.
If you send me a link to it, I'll put it in the description. I did put your YouTube channel.
Okay, yeah, and so
we were just talking to Joshua earlier. He does websites, right?
Yeah.
He might be able to help you with that because I think he's got some pre-built kind of like website frameworks that might help with that.
I'll have to hit him up then. Thanks for letting me know. But yeah, I would say look at that and just I know that like the IDW is a big concept and it's I'm sure some folks would be eager to imagine it like being something that starts out really swinging, but we're just starting. We're small. We're gonna do some initial projects that are simple and achievable and let those roll into things that are gradually more ambitious with time. Folks can learn about what kind of projects we're doing, how they can get involved, how they can support the organization with contributions. We've got all that set up now. And again, we're a 501c3, so contributions to us are tax exempt if people care about that. Then that'll be forthcoming. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to ask me about it before I leave?
I mean, there's a lot of things I want to ask you about it, but I think I'd like to set up another, like maybe we could do another interview in the future, just some more focus, just like just me and Jeff, and you interviews would talk about just those things. But I really appreciate you coming on and like talking about this. I think it's a really fascinating idea that you guys are doing, and I really support it a lot. I think you're actually doing something that's very important in society right now. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
You did bring up one point from earlier that made me think of. So you talked about the consequences of being canceled, the financial consequences of being actually canceled, but there's also the financial inhibits people from speaking up against in the first place so that they don't get canceled because there are potential consequences for getting canceled. You don't have enough people speaking up against it where they might otherwise push back. I'm in a lot of anti-woke groups, and that comes up a lot. Is why this is happening in my workplace. Well, why don't you say something about it? I have a family to feed. I need the salary. I can't afford to lose my job. I have to put my head down.
And that's why a lot of people didn't stand up for Brett Weinstein and Evergreen, and I'm sure that's happened at many other workplaces. I mean, I know some other examples that aren't famous, but just there are things that happen at workplaces.
I've heard probably.
And I think that's key. There is I remember Jordan Peterson had an interview one time talking about how you should develop yourself, and as he put it, so that if someone tries to push you a little farther than you should go, you can say no. Part of developing yourself means that you have that kind of financial security, and with it, many ways, actual security. Either that if you do get canceled, your life isn't ruined, or so that you're the kind of person who isn't afraid to stand up for somebody because you know that you're not going to have your life ruined over it. Maybe set back, but I mean, the lights will be on, the kids will be fed, and you won't be worried about those things. And I think as we can make progress in that area, even if we're not like directly giving financial support to folks, but if we're just opening more doors for people to do that, it can have kind of like it's like when people talk about like the runaway greenhouse effect, where the more the earth warms, ice caps melt, then less sunlight gets reflected and more gets absorbed by the ocean, and the warming effect happens faster, and you can have kind of a runaway solidarity effect or whatever we want to call it, where people become more defensible like this, and then of course it has another effect where when people are less affected by it, part of why people do the social shaming, like I mentioned earlier, is they believe it has some kind of effect. If it stops having an effect, people will be less incentivized to do it, and then the actual attempts, successes will decline, attempts will decline. It'll feed into itself, and maybe over time we don't have a thing like cancel culture anymore, and it just becomes a footnote in some kind of odd history book
or an Arthur Miller play.
Exactly.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I think what you're doing is really important. Thank you for coming on, Joe. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Roenn, did you have anything else?
No, I think I'm pretty much good. I'm part of the subreddit. I left my first comment in it the other day, and it got quite a few upvotes. So I'll be a more active poster in there.
If you do a post or comment that has any kind of tone of "stick it to the man," you'll get a lot of upvotes there. So just
okay.
I know that I do know one thing, that a lot of the right wingers there are sensitive and defensive, and if they see something from a left winger, they think, "Oh no, they're trying to brigade it," so they might downvote you out of habit.
Sure.
But if you can drill into their "stick it to the man" feelings, you'll be able to score well with some of them.
Yeah, my focus as a leftist is first and foremost on like economics and middle working class stuff. So I think there's some common ground there for sure.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, yeah, it was good. It was good to talk about this with you guys, and you all can know how to reach me. So please do. And Chris, I'll definitely be up to another interview with you.
Sure. Thank you. Have a good day.
And send me the link to your subreddit too.
Yeah, I'll send you the link right after this.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Good talking, Joe. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. See you, Joe.
Somebody just posted in chat a minute ago. Ray here said something about Canada's passed a bill to regulate podcasts. I looked it up.
Yeah, I saw that. It's only if you're like over 1 million or something.
On the Online Streaming Act, social media and online services offering podcasts will now have to register with the regulator, while social media users, including those who share podcasts over social platforms, will not. So it doesn't sound that terribly scary, but I guess the fact they're regulating it all isn't necessarily a good thing. But
yeah, if you get big enough, you're gonna they're gonna start treating it like a media company.
Yeah.
It's probably just to keep any of those Canadian Joe Rogans from popping out. It's also, like everyone's afraid of the next Joe Rogan,
Right. Also, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take up so much talking time. I didn't know this was just supposed to be like an interview thing with.
No, it's not. It's the extreme stream. It could be anything. You didn't take up anything. I think the conversation about shaming not only was relevant to what Joe was saying, but I thought it was an important one to have. It even has me thinking about some of it, as usual with us, is semantics and really subtle, nuanced semantics.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I don't disagree with you on some of the larger principles that you've outlined.
Yeah, and again, like just to be clear, I don't like the idea of anybody being treated in any kind of cruel way, or any person being chased down and fired and kicked out of their college and job, and like stuff like that. It's just, I'm purely talking about publicly like having some kind of cultural hegemony where we're like, here are kind of the norms. And there are things that are outside of that people know are kind of like, this is like bad, because there's no way to not have that. Even if you said,
like in a country as diverse and large as the United States, who sets the norms? Like, I mean, that's what happened at Evergreen.
It's just a giant collective cultural conversation. I mean,
you're never going to have unity on the norms, though.
No, I mean, there's never going to be perfect unity, but it's like, I mean, but there's a range of acceptable beliefs and discourse, and then where the edges are, even those edges are kind of blurry spectrums, but there is kind of a, and even that might differ from state to state or from city to city or community to community. But I'm just saying that there's no way for that to not be a thing. There's always going to be some acceptable bounds of behavior that when people step outside of it, the group goes like, we don't like you, that's not okay, get out. That's just being human. There's nothing that we can do to ever stop that from happening. All we can do is be more reasonable.
The less evolved humans. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. But still, some humans, for whatever reason, I don't think everybody would. Like, I have no desire to shame people that way. But should that have like workplace consequences?
Well, probably not. But the thing that I just described isn't just shaming. I mean, what I just described sounds like kind of what you were saying earlier, that even like you have engaged in with kind of trolls and various, you know,
Yeah,
people
there are
online that
people
are
that
being
show up on
assholes
some
and
of the
stuff.
streams
Yeah.
that we're part of that show up drunk. They harass everybody. They talk over everybody. They insult. I don't want them on these streams. They ruin
Yeah.
the
Of
whole
course.
tone that we're trying to set. And I
So
don't have
you
any power
shame
to do
them.
anything
You're
about
like,
them because they're not my
you're
streams.
bad.
But
Get out. You
I
know?
can harass them back until they leave.
It doesn't actually work that well. It usually is better to just stand up to them calmly and then they usually back away.
Yeah, because that just escalates them. Like once you start.
Or you just like if it does escalate, you can just like block them or kick them out, right? Like if it's like a stream or a subreddit, like you have the power to just, you know.
We're just guests on these streams, and so there's definitely like standards that I want to be able to gatekeep who comes into these streaming communities, but I only have the power to gatekeep my own little corner of it. And so I do need other tactics to try to influence who comes in on these other streams. And so some of what you described, I do attempt. It doesn't usually work. It's really up to the moderator to determine that. But I do encounter concrete examples of what you're talking about in the streaming community.
Right, because there's kind of an escalation chain, right? So first you make clear, I'm not happy with you, I don't like your behavior, and then it escalates and might get kind of aggressive, and then if they don't stop, eventually you will just kick them out, and you say, okay, you don't get to play this game with us anymore. And so that's kind of so then they're kind of excised from it. And I would say that thing that you are describing, if you just scale that up, that's what's happening in every level of society. People start by saying, we don't like what you're saying. And then if the person continues and it escalates, eventually they just excise them from the group. And depending on if you're Twitter, if you're a business, you might fire the person. If you're a website, you might deplatform the person, but there's some version of that model is happening at every single level of our culture.
I have no problem when it happens on those individual levels. It's whenever, for example, if we kick that person out of the stream and then we go to find out who employs them, and then we go find out who their family is, and then we go and then you go tell those people. That's where it becomes a problem.
Yeah,
you know, it's not about the fact that, like, okay, if you're in a job and in that job you're acting inappropriately, you get fired for that. That's fine. But if you said something on Twitter that offended some people, that shouldn't affect your job.
I agree. No, yeah.
That's where I have a problem with it. If you're acting up in that place, you know, in that thing, that should be isolated to that. You know, I mean, now if you're someone who is a murderer, if you're a child molester, then you should go to jail for your crimes. But then once you've paid your debt to society, I think you deserve a chance to rehabilitate as well, which that's a whole other problem. Like, but I don't think that public shaming should be an acceptable punishment for overall through all of society for bad behavior.
I agree.
General, unless it rises to the level of criminality. If it rises to the level of criminality, if you're robbing people's houses, you're beating people up, if you're murdering people, whatever, you know, you should be criminally charged and tried in a court of law. I don't think that it shouldn't be an option to just like shame someone until they feel bad about murdering people. No, they should go to jail, you know?
Sure. And I would say that I agree. And the shame part aside, I mean, I am against that, like going that far with somebody. Again, except in the case, and I'm coming at this from a very broad, like political framework, there are genuinely actors outside of the game of your culture that are actively seeking to destroy it in very, very horrible ways. And I hate to use this example because it's cheap, but if you're in Nazi Germany in the 40s, okay, and say you're a political actor who you're against the Nazis, you would do everything that you could if you knew like an active Nazi, and it's the early nascent stage of that party and Hitler like coming to power. You would try to debate and have conversations in the public square and write pamphlets and do stuff to combat that ideology. But as it rises, you should do everything in your power to stop that from coming to power in your country, because once it does, horrible things are going to happen, right? So that means even if you're a public university in the early young Hitler wants to come and give a speech, you should be like, absolutely fucking not, because at a certain point, we should allow each other our platforms to communicate if we both kind of have the same goal in mind and we're playing that same broader metagame. But if you're a person like a Hitler, a Stalin, or like a Mussolini type of person, at that point, if you control the institutions and those people want to use your institution to spread their thing, at a certain point, you have an obligation, I think, or a right to flex your institutional power as much as you can, to use power to stop and silence and squash those people. Because it's not a game of like, we're not all in liberalism anymore. It's devolving
No,
into
we are still
in
that's the crux. We are still in liberalism.
I don't so that's where I don't think so. If that person is not playing in the game of liberalism, then they don't deserve to be
us
treated.
resorting to illiberal tactics that just takes us further out of liberalism.
I don't think so, Jeff. I mean, okay,
it does.
Help me understand what you're saying then. So you don't.
He's saying that by going outside of the liberalism and acting in illiberal ways, you're just further pushing things outside of a liberal society. You're making things worse overall. You're creating a worse, more, I hate this word, but toxic environment that engenders more toxicity. Now,
Okay.
I mean, because let's be honest here. The fact of the matter is that even when Hitler was coming to power, nobody saw that coming. He was on the cover of Time magazine as the person of the year before the World War II started.
Yeah.
I mean, he was like his hero was Henry Ford. I mean, like he was a popular person in the United States. He was considered a good guy. People didn't see that coming, and the fact that people think they can see that coming and they got to squash this person. I just don't trust anybody out there to be that prescient and see the future that clearly, that no, this guy, because Nick Fuentes, he's a fucking moron. He's not.
I think the more you let him
threat.
speak, the more you're going to damage him.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, trying to cancel Nick Fuentes is pointless anyway, because he has no sense of shame. And two, he's a moron. The more people hear him, the less they like him.
I'm saying what I think should happen with Nick Fuentes, it's not moral shaming. I don't care if they feel an internal sense of shame, but I want them, because they seek to quite literally destroy a society and enact vast levels of aggression upon people. I just want them to have their power taken away. I don't care if he feels bad about himself. I want Nick to be, in every conceivable way that we can use our institutions to do so, remove him from everything.
There's one good way to do that. It's called ignoring him. He's a provocateur. If you ignore him, he will go away.
Yes, and I would agree with that. We ignore him. He is debanked. He's on every no-fly list. He can't open a bank account. He can't be on social media.
That's not ignoring him.
He's basically gone. Well, that's even worse than ignoring. He's ignored, and he cannot spread his message.
You're pushing him underground. You're pushing him underground to where he has to find other ways, and then he becomes a hero to people like him. That's the problem. You're creating martyrs. You're not.
I used to think that. I used to agree with that. I don't think that I don't know. I thought about that a lot, and maybe you're right. I mean, so I've held that position for most of my life. What you're saying, and I've been like, no, we should always have the conversations. We should let everybody on social media, and we just keep having the debates, and we like let people speak, and eventually it'll just kind of hash out, and the best ideas will just kind of float to the top, and it'll be okay. I don't think that that's true anymore, because
you've given up on liberalism.
No, I haven't given up on liberalism. What I've given up on, the thing that I have given up on is treating people who are outside of liberalism fairly. That's what I've given up on. Because again, if you're outside of that game, any fairness that you treat that person with, they are using it to take over your system and then destroy you. The difference is that
you've just placed yourself outside of the game by doing that, and then I have to treat you the same way.
I think that philosophy is how people's countries eventually fall, if they allow that kind of stuff to just kind of rampantly be there, and they don't do anything to stop it. You know, I like at a certain point, don't you have an obligation to stop those kinds of people, or do you just let them talk and roam free
and I don't
forever?
feel the level of threat from them that you feel either, because I think that their ideas are crap, and I'm confident in our society that liberalism will expose that eventually.
Look at Trump, man.
I'm not worried that there's going to be a Nick Fuentes takeover of America.
If the media had treated Trump the way they treated Jeb Bush, there would be no Trump. That's the fact. That's true.
Maybe, I don't know.
No, that's true. The media's obsession with Trump is what created Trump as a president. There would be no President Trump if the media hadn't focused so much attention, so much time. Dude, they would put a camera on a podium that he was just supposed to come speak at. They put it on there for 5 hours before he came on. They were beyond obsessed with the man.
Oh no,
they turned him into president.
I remember.
I'm just saying,
that's an interesting theory.
Right now.
That might be the case. My thought is that Trump was so charismatic and funny and popular that he would have won anyway. But I don't know. I mean, it's
I was shocked
possible
when he won, but now I understand it.
Look
I'm just not threatened by ideas. There's no ideas that I'm that threatened by that I couldn't that I feel like I have to shut down. It's people that like.
Have y'all heard of the paradox of tolerance? Are y'all familiar with that little thought experiment?
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that?
I disagree with it.
Okay, so you think that we should tolerate intolerance? Like we should never do anything to stop that actively.
I don't know if the way you're framing my disagreement is.
I mean,
completely fair, but I don't agree that we should not tolerate I don't agree with their idea of we're justified in being intolerant toward intolerance. I am not for shutting down ideas or speech at all, except at like the fire in the theater type.
Okay. Well, I guess I would
you shut
consider
people
this
down
kind of
that way, you create these martyrs, man. You're creating martyrs out of people that don't deserve the recognition. They don't deserve that kind of they turn into idols by the idiots out there. They because they got attacked by the man. They got shut down. See, like it's the Matrix coming to get Andrew Tate. Look at me, you know. Right. I mean, like it's that shit, man. Like I mean, like if it weren't, I mean, now if Andrew Tate goes to jail, that might actually do something, you know, to actually bring Andrew Tate down. But if he doesn't go to jail, all this shit that he's been going through, it's going to make him that much bigger.
Oh, of course,
because he's a martyr. And I'm just saying, like, it's kind of one of those things. If you're going to come at the king, you better not miss. If you're going to try to take somebody down, take him down all the way.
I agree.
But none of this fucking, I'm sorry, shaming is weak.
No more half measures.
And it's weak when it comes to big people. And that's what we're talking about now. We're talking about people that actually pose a threat.
Is the fear that ideas are going to have an influence on people, and that's what you're trying to curb?
No, I mean, I guess the fear is that if we
what's the harm in people hearing ideas that are crazy?
I mean, I think that people should be able to hear ideas that are crazy, of course, and we should be able to talk about them. But I'm saying that at a certain point, if there are people that are genuinely dangerous, evil figures, we do not have an obligation to platform them and hand them a megaphone. That's all I'm saying.
We don't have to hand them a megaphone, but we don't have to shut down their ideas.
We're not talking about.
How is Nick Fuentes dangerous? How is he a danger to any? Nobody takes him seriously.
He has over, well, according to his stats and numbers, I mean, he has quite a large following. Now, it might sound small. I mean, so after being deplatformed, between his platforms that still exist, he has somewhere in the ballpark of like 50 or like 60,000 people. And that doesn't sound like a lot. Okay. But whenever you look at, he built AFPAC, he had multiple senators come and speak there. His whole thing with Kanye. I mean, this guy he's not a nobody. And
he never would have gotten in with
the
Kanye.
thing with Kanye just made him look even more foolish.
Yeah. I mean, and he wouldn't have gotten into that if it weren't for the fact there were so many people trying to like get after him, and that made Kanye feel like they had like a common bond because they were both attacked by the man, kind of thing.
Maybe I think that we in America, we live in this bubble of liberalism where we think that kind of stuff can never rise to power again. Like we just feel like, oh, that's kind of the past.
Yeah, I do think that,
now.
and you think
like,
differently.
The Bolsheviks, the Nazis, Mao Zedong, and those were the kind of the
I see it coming from the left more than anywhere else.
But it's like in countries all over the world still, we have authoritarians coming to power and doing horrible things to people. And to think that can't happen here because, oh, these people are just kind of silly. Let them talk. We should let them have Twitter accounts. Let the algorithm boost them. And like, let's allow that to fester. I just think that there's something about it that if you allow that stuff to just kind of go unchecked and like, hey, can we come speak at this college? Yeah, sure, absolutely, free speech. If you tolerate intolerance to that point, it takes you over. And once they have power, they're not going to tolerate you. You know what I'm saying?
The only evidence, even remotely, that I've seen of that is from the left, and I have no desire to shut the woke down. I think Kamala Harris is way more dangerous than Nick Fuentes, and I have no impulse to shut her down at all.
Why do you think she's more dangerous than a person like
because I think people are going to take her ideas more seriously than they will Nick Fuentes. And I think the woke are the authoritarian. They are the Maos. If the threat happens at all, it's going to come from the progressive left. And even then, I have no desire to shut them down. I want people to hear how crazy they are.
I think that if it were the case, if I grant you that, say, the progressive left turns into say the progressive left is taken over by the tanky wing, say it's completely taken over by people like Hassan Piker who are really cool with Mao and shit. Okay, say that, which they are a very slim minority, but let's just say that the entirety of the progressive left wing becomes Mao Stalinists. Okay, if that happened and they were taking over, and the conservative center, whatever, people still maintain control of some institutions, at that point, I would say, Jeff, that it would be incumbent upon you and all of those people to flex all the power you have to stop them from seizing power. Can I give an example? If you're...
It kind of happened with Trump.
Imagine you were a soldier in World War II. And you're I don't know, you're camped out, and it's late, so my brain's drawn a blank, but you're at some battle and you're about to charge up a hill and kill a bunch of Japanese soldiers, okay? Because they're trying to come kill you. And you know where they are, and you're planning the route to go up there and kill them. And you're camping out, you're biding your time, and then right whenever you're about to go do a surprise attack, one of your guys says, "Hey man, don't you think it's kind of not fair for us to sneak up on these soldiers and kill them? Maybe we should let them know that we're coming first." And then you look at him and you go "What are you talking about? We're at war." And he's like, "Well, how would you like it if they did that to us?" And you would be like, "What do you that would be a great framework if we were playing a cooperative pro-social game with them, but we're at war. They want us dead. The
I'm not
fighting
as
fair is gone."
As
right?
You are.
So
I don't think we're at
I'm
that
just
level
using that analogy. I don't think that we are either. But I'm saying
you're
the example.
Kind of prepared for it to go there. Some of your fear comes from that it could reach that point.
What I'm saying is I'm using that example to show that the concept of fighting fair and treating people as you would have them treat you only applies if you're playing the same game and you're cooperating.
Well, we are all even Nick Fuentes is playing
I don't
American
think so,
democracy.
Jeff. That's where we disagree, because he wants...
But that's just a belief.
Theocratic monarchy.
Arbitrary determination you've made. But I still consider him an American citizen.
Why is it an arbitrary determination if he wants to overthrow democracy and install a dictatorship and have sodomy laws and ship gay people to camps?
There's people that want to do all
equivalency?
kind of crazy things.
They don't have any power. Nick Fuentes doesn't have kind of power.
But he's still playing. He's still playing the same game we are of American liberalism. He's still engaged in the same political process that we are. He has no more power than you or I do to
because
affect
he's
politics.
Inside of the system. So yes, he has to use the system to take it over. But
he hasn't done it yet. He hasn't even
come nowhere close.
Right,
he's got 60,000 followers.
And he personally might never be able to do that. But there's nothing saying that a person like him couldn't in the future. Just like in the 40s, if they had said, "Oh, this Hitler guy, I'll take him seriously," or like whenever Mao was coming to power, I'll take him seriously, or whenever Lenin came to power, dude, he's just silly. This stuff happens
but
all
none
the
of that was
time.
here in the U.S.
That's the rule, not the exception, right?
Trump
We
is as
live in
close as
the
I've ever
exception,
seen it come, and
I
even
think
we survived even that.
I just think that we need to be careful of people that are that authoritarian, and keep in mind what has happened every 10 or 20 years in history. Some country has some genocide because of people like that somewhere in the world, and it's just not out of the question to think that could happen here, and we can't lose what we have.
I think if it happened, like you're sounding more authoritarian than Nick Fuente. If it happens here, it's going to happen from the tankies.
So, I mean, I'm just wondering. So, do you feel like it's probably just as justified to like go after Hassan Piker than Nick Fuentes?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, because he's a Maoist.
Because Roenn is a base centrist. He is a base centrist.
I want people like Hassan, if he keeps having those kinds of takes, I want people like him to be deplatformed. I don't want that.
Yeah, I hate Hassan
because
I'm
when
not
he
ready
does
to like
that,
make a move against him.
He's advocating for violence. I mean, is the fire in the movie theater moment.
He's way more dangerous than Nick Fuentes because he has a huge following. He has 5 million followers, something like that.
And we can talk about like the relative weights of people right now, but what I'm trying to say is just a more general philosophy of authoritarian things like that, whether it's fascism or whether it's like Stalinist communism. We have to be on the lookout for stuff like that. And I think that there is something that strikes me as naive about the attitude of that stuff. We just
may be,
let
and
them use our
that
institutions to spread their message. I just think that there's something about that I just can't get behind, because historically that is how the countries got taken over.
But not America. Like, I don't feel that.
We've only been here for 200 years, man. Like, we're not a very old
I have
country.
more faith in our system, I guess.
I don't. I don't have faith in people.
And I may be more on the naive side, but I think you're more on the cynical side. And so neither one of us probably has the perfect balance. But a lot of my position comes from my belief in America. And some of yours sounds like it comes from some skepticism about America to weather those kind of crises.
Yeah, well, and I mean, just the bloodbath and the tragedy of history, and seeing how gullible people are, and how the entire country of Germany fell into this fervor, into this cult of worshiping Hitler. How like how the USSR formed, how North Korea formed. It's like you look at this stuff and you see
here. There's just something special about us. I think
North
Korea, like the fact that we survived Trump makes me even more confident in our system. Because if any of that was going to happen, it came very close during Trump.
I agree with that. I would agree with that part.
North Korea formed because at the end of World War II, they basically split Korea between Russia wanted to set up a thing and America wanted to set up a thing along with the Allied forces. And so they let Russia set up the government in North Korea. And that's why the government in North Korea is the way it is. It's not because there was
that might not be the best example, but they exist because of Russia, that existed because the Bolsheviks won, because they weren't, whenever they had a chance, if there was ever a chance to squash that, they couldn't or didn't. And I'm saying that if there's ever a movement like that, it is a war. It's like the example I gave of the people are up on the hill and like one of your guys goes, "Oh, like we shouldn't go after him. That's mean. Like we should."
But we're not there yet. That's why
I know.
You may be right.
I don't want us to get there. I don't want us to get
right,
there.
and I may look back and say, "Damn, I should have paid more attention. He was right." Or I may be right, and you might look back and say, "Oh, I was catastrophizing for nothing. Everything was fine." It's so hard to determine. Just from our current vantage point, we're kind of both making guesses.
No, I agree.
I want to say that with the example of Nick Fuentes, I don't think anyone did as much to take the wind out of Nick Fuentes' sails than Destiny did by befriending him, bringing him multiple podcasts, and just letting him talk and letting people hear what an idiot is. He lost more steam and more power during that than he did in all the years before with people trying to like take him down. And I'm saying that is a strategy that very few people take because they don't want to be associated with those people and stuff like that. And Destiny took a hit on that. I'm not a huge Destiny fan, but I think what he did with Nick Fuentes was really strategic and really, really credible. I think that he brought Nick Fuentes down better by befriending him and actually treating him like a human being than anybody ever did by treating him like a pariah. And I think that's something to be considered, because when you really humanize somebody, sure, you could make them seem more huggable and squishy, but more than likely you're going to make them seem less like a godlike figure that needs to be worshipped and more like a person that just has some bad ideas. Now, there are maybe some special circumstances when you have a cult of personality around someone that gets built up like the one around Trump because of the media, because that's what built it up. Because like the constant attacks against him, everything gave him seem like a martyr to the right. People felt like they were obligated to support him because look at how unfairly he's being treated. Even I felt bad for him, and I fucking hate the guy. But if they hadn't have like constantly attacked him on so many things, people would have seen the ideas he had were already bad enough. There wasn't any need to make shit up about him. They just needed to put what was out there. But they didn't. They had to keep making shit up. They had to keep attacking him unfairly. They made him into like this godlike figure because of how much they just refused to stop obsessing over him. I don't think I can think of a single. Maybe you can think of an example. Show me an example of someone in this modern context, because with the internet and everything, this is not the 1940s. We don't have the same conditions the same conditions that created Hitler don't exist today. So find me an example of someone who really was dangerous that was actually brought down by social shaming campaigns. I mean, show me something, because I can't think of one.
I'm not talking about social shaming campaigns.
Okay, or even like the
I'm talking about
judging.
just complete. I'm talking about being barred from every institution in the entire country. I mean, every platform, every university, every banking system, like that. If there's a threat that bad,
that's where we're at.
It becomes a war. I don't think we're there either, but I'm saying that if threats like that arise, that is how I think that those things should be handled.
Would you do that currently with Nick Fuentes, if you could?
Well, it has been done to him. I
don't know, because he hasn't gone away though, has he? He's
still
there.
Mostly, and the thing that kind of brought him back a little bit was Destiny. To your point, I love Destiny, but I almost have the opposite take, to where I thought that I'm torn on the Destiny thing, because I think on one hand he did a great job at pushing back on Fuentes, because Destiny is incredibly based, amazing rhetorician, and pretty much crushed Fuentes in every conversation that they had, and was super aggressive. And that's how you're going to do. If you're going to platform those people, you have to do it in a way where you show how bad their ideas are, because that's what I would consider responsible platforming, and not just like letting them talk.
He's a damn squib now. He has no
unfettered.
Power.
So just in my experience, I mean, I hadn't thought of Fuentes in years and years until Destiny has him on his show. And suddenly there's now hundreds of thousands of new eyeballs on Nick who had never even heard of him before. And then Nick was a relevant figure again. He was on my mind. I saw him on the internet now pretty like a lot. He went on a bunch of podcasts after Destiny had brought him back into the spotlight, and then he got hooked up with Kanye and Milo, and all that kind of was culminating right in the aftermath of all the circuits of him being on all of Destiny's live streams. And Fuentes was smart. He knew that is going to make him more relevant and get more eyeballs on him again. But I also think that Destiny did a great job of pushing back. So I think that was a mixed bag for me, but I wouldn't say that on net it was definitely good. Because if Destiny had never even had him on at all and that arc never happened, I still would have, Fuentes probably wouldn't have been on my mind for, instead of 3 years, like 5 years.
He still could have. He still would have been somewhere building his audience and building the out of your sightline. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not happening. Like, look, Alex Jones didn't go away just because they did platforming from everything. He's still there. He's been doing his show on his own website for this whole time,
right.
And he has just as many followers now as he did back then. He might have had a temporary speed bump, but if anything, he's probably more powerful now. I mean, I like Alex Jones, and I'm actually a fan of Alex Jones. I don't agree with him on a lot of things, but I think he's an amazingly funny and charismatic, provocateur type person that I don't think is particularly dangerous. But I do think that I just don't see it working. Like the people say, like, see what they say, what they see is they see somebody get this platform, they stop hearing about them, and they think, okay, see, it worked. Deplatforming works, but you don't hear about these people going to bankruptcy. You don't hear about them people like working at McDonald's. They're still going. They're building an empire. It's just out of your sight, just because you don't see it. It's just like you might kill the cockroach, but you're not even touching the 3 million that are underneath that rock.
I agree, but why is that true? Because of the point that you made earlier, that's what happens whenever you do half measures. If you do the half measure thing and they're still allowed to grow, they get bigger. So that's why I'm like, either you go all the way or you don't do it at all. That's kind of my position with it,
but
where
see,
it's like
for someone to rise to that level to actually deserve the full measure, they need to be Hitler. They need to be that, because you're talking about not just eradicating a person. You're talking about eradicating their ideology. You're talking about eradicating the people that support them. You're talking about going scorched earth. I mean, that's what I mean.
I'm talking about just not the people that support them, but what I would want to eradicate in that case is that person's ability to simply propagate that message by any means possible.
It'll never happen. They'll find a way.
Sure, it could. If every ISP like IP bans that person, they're done. I mean, they could try to like organize in real life. Well, then every college just doesn't platform them.
I could get around that right now. I could get around that kind of ban right now. I'm not even anybody, and I could get around that. It's not that hard.
But then every time that they're found online, they just get banned again. Like any website that they build is banned. I mean, there's a way
anything they're
to
doing
do
is that bad. They need to go to jail. We need to start passing laws.
Yeah, you're elevating him to a threat that's far beyond the consequences that you're posing.
I'm saying that if we had a modern day Mao or Hitler kind of person, that is what I think that's how they should be handled.
Mao was advocating for and eventually reached the goal of killing large numbers of people of his own country. So yeah, if someone's out there advocating for genocide, they probably need to go to jail.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying, is that is what Fuentes and tankies on the far left want.
I want Fuentes say a lot of dumb, stupid shit. I've never heard him say like actually advocate genocide.
It's one of those things that the ethno-nationalists say, where they're like, the problem with America is we have to get back to a pure white ethno state. We're currently at 60% white people, but we have to get to, at least like a 95%, rate. And then they say, we're not going to use violence, but somehow we need to get that 60% up to like a 99, and that 40% of the population down to 1. No, I know. And so do the Nazbols, and they're like, and we need to get this 40% of like
the
Nazbols down to 1%. But they're like, but we're not going to use violence to do it. It's like bullshit. I think that we've been through enough in history now where we're a bit smarter and we can see that kind of stuff and advance a bit better than people like back in the 40s and shit could. And I think that you kind of got to use your judgment a little bit. I don't think it's a big leap, man. Like.
For
there we go, National Bolshevism. Yeah, that's it. That's what most of the Wignets are these days. They've all abandoned capitalism. I mean, so the white nationalists of today are not capitalists; like they're socialists. I mean, they're because they think that capitalism is run by Jews to bring in mass immigration because of free labor. For
some reason, I'm just not threatened by that.
I don't see their ideas taking off like that. Now, also, you have to remember something. There's something people don't understand. I think what happened in Russia when what eventually led to Stalin coming in power. That's a very unique circumstance, and they also expanded everything. If Russia had been the size that Russia became during the USSR, well, there would have been a different situation entirely. Russia was much smaller, and then they expanded. Germany was a much smaller country too, and that was why it was a lot easier for Hitler taking power like that in the United States, man. It's just, you might be able to get a city on your side, but like we're talking about you can fit 12 Germanys in like Texas, I think. So it's just We're not talking about the number of people population wise, the amount of land, everything. We're just talking about a much, much different situation. Now, I'm not saying like we should just let a Hitler run around and be Hitler everywhere. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that, I mean, I don't know. Like he said, like, Trump was probably the closest we've come to a while. I don't know. Maybe Biden is. Maybe the Illuminati exists and they're really running everything behind the scenes. But then again, if somebody being that open and obvious about, and they're gaining political power and they openly want to genocide people, well, then, yeah, we should do everything in our power. We should probably take up arms. We should probably take up arms and actually shoot the person. We should probably assassinate them if that was the case. But I mean, that's not happening. It's just not. And I mean, I'm not going to shoot anybody. I don't believe in that kind of thing. You're saying it's what?
He's saying it's happening. It's just coded.
Yeah, but they don't have the power, though. I mean, like, they're not that they're, and even if they the code might be there for the small pocket of Nazi roaches, but the other people that might hear his message and actually believe the fact that they don't want to be violent, once they find out there's violence involved, they're not going to go along with it. I don't think so.
Yeah,
anyway.
I'm not at the same threat level either.
I just don't see it right now. I mean, I do see that. I mean, like, believe me, if there were tankies in American politics right now that were gaining a lot of steam or something like that, I'd definitely be worried. I just don't see it right now. I mean, because anybody who openly supports Mao as a revolutionary hero, yeah, that's no friend of mine. Anybody who supports Stalin's the biggest murderer in all of human history. He's responsible for more deaths than anybody. Maybe, but we don't really know the numbers.
Well, I mean, Hassan Piker streams with a hammer and sickle flag behind him.
I know.
And Nick Fuentes, before being deplatformed, was on a meteoric rise of gaining followers till he was debanked and banned from every website in existence. So there's no telling there's just no telling how big he would be now if for the past 7 years he had been allowed on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We don't know how much bigger he would be. And that's a counterfactual.
So you're going off of your imagination.
No, I'm saying that we can't know, but I'm saying that the fact that he has
I'm saying we can't
right now means that we can't just say, oh, well, then therefore he like never would have been a threat. Like, it's fine. He's like not a big deal, because we don't know.
But you could do that. You could say that about anybody. Like, they're not a threat now, but they could be in the future. So
I can say that about you, Roenn. I mean, I could say you're not a threat right now, but you might be. So we might as well go ahead.
The reason that I say that, though, is because he has always been very open about being for dictatorship. And he is a person who was on a meteoric rise. He founded AFPAC. He had Marjorie Taylor Greene come speak there. I mean, he was on a massive ascent. And then suddenly, once he was deplatformed, that was cut short. And you can see that in his sub count online. So I'm just saying it's very likely, if he had not, that he would have been a considerably bigger figure today.
I think you're giving him way more.
I don't think he ever would have been as big as Hassan is now.
Marjorie Taylor Greene
is now.
I think he'd be infinitely bigger now. I don't want. I mean,
no. How many subscribers does Hassan have? Let's see. Hassan Piker subscribers.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you say that he wouldn't be bigger than Hassan, or that he wouldn't be bigger than he is now?
I don't think he would have been bigger than Hassan is.
Me neither.
Right now.
Okay, no. If that's what you're saying, I agree. He wouldn't be as big as Hassan because he's not that palatable. But I think that Nick would be bigger than he is now. I think objectively he would be bigger than he is now had he never been deplatformed.
I ain't worried about it.
I mean, hell, Hassan isn't even as big as I thought he was. On Twitch, he has 2.5 million followers. Yeah. And on YouTube, he has 1.25 million. With 390 million views total. So, I mean, he's not even as big as I thought he was.
He's the biggest political
He's still the
streamer
biggest political streamer
on
Twitch and on YouTube, really. I mean, in terms of notoriety, I don't think anybody has the name recognition that Hassan
we'll
does.
see if he can influence the next election.
We'll see. And just real quick, I mean, just, to y'all's point, I agree. We're not there yet. But I'm saying that I don't want us to get there. And I think how we get there is by ignoring and downplaying and writing off when people come up with those viewpoints. If we treat them like, they're just trolling around, like they're not a big deal, whatever. I think that that's how eventually your country might end up, where there's enough people that believe that, where bad things start to happen. And I don't want us to get there. And I think that...
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
No.
I mean, just like... And I'm trying to find out the best way to word this, and I need to think through this more. But
just say it. You don't have to find a good way to word it. Just say it.
The way that I look at it is that there has to be, like Jordan Peterson talks about, like whenever you are, I'm not sure why I'm referencing JP because like y'all aren't big fans of him in particular. I'm just used to talking to people that are, but he is like whenever two teams are facing each other on the football field, on one level they're competing, but there's a broader cooperative framework that they're agreeing to play by the same rules of the game. So really they're cooperating more broadly, and within that framework they compete, but they're agreeing to not start stabbing each other with knives, right? So there's places you don't go. So that's a competition within a broader cooperative framework. That's how I view liberalism. I view it like the Republicans, the Democrats, we can compete because there's a broader cooperative framework where we're not going to start killing each other. We're not going to start, so we can play fair. And if our opponents win, we concede because we go, you know what, they would do the same for us because we want to win, but more deeply than we want to win, we want our system of democracy and liberalism to function. Okay.
How has Nick stepped outside of that?
Well, so within that framework, that's where we owe people that reciprocal altruism. And I would agree with that. But when people are outside of that framework, there is no longer a broader cooperative framework within which our competition is nestled anymore. You see? So it's like it's untethered. And now it's like the stakes are much higher because if you're battling a person, if you come to a football game and you're there to play football, but that team is there with knives in their jerseys, and once the kickoff happens, like they come and they're going to stab you and fucking kill you, you're not playing football anymore. You know what I'm saying? So, and that's what politics is to me, and maybe I'm too cynical, but to me, if my opponent is cool with democracy and they're going to play fair, I'll play fair. But if they're coming to fucking take over the country and install a dictator, and if they had their way, they would turn us into like one of those countries that we all know about from the 20th century, all bets are off. We're not playing that same game anymore, and there's no cooperative framework now. And I don't think that we should I don't want to go out and kill them unless they come at us first, but at the least things like deplatforming them, things like not allowing them to use our institutions to undermine themselves, I think I'm comfortable with doing that. Does that make sense?
No, it doesn't. And here's why. You're saying that speech, just the act of speech, can take someone outside of that framework. Nick hasn't done anything yet. He has not done anything outside of the rules of football, but he's spoken and expressed ideas that now places him outside of the rules of football.
Do you not see,
I am all for you expressing anything you want about Nick Fuentes, and I support it. But the consequences you're trying to impose on him are way out of proportion to anything he's actually done.
And let's be fair, nobody here is a fan of Nick Fuentes. I
right.
want to make that very clear.
Do you not see, though, Jeff, how, they might just be words, but also me telling a person, like, I'm going to come to your house and kill you, those are just words. But it's words represent intent to do an action. And at a certain point, don't you think we have to use our better judgment to look at people and go, you know what? If this guy comes to power, he's going to try to do mass deportations. And what's going to happen whenever the people refuse to be deported?
When he takes the first action that places him outside of, like, that's what I'm like.
The first time somebody pulls a knife, the person they actually pull a knife,
like he's on the football field saying, "Oh, I have a knife," but he hasn't actually pulled a knife. He's still playing football.
By the time the first action comes, I think it's already too late. That's what I'm saying. That if you know that they're coming to the game with knives, you don't let them in the stadium.
But you don't even know if
that would be the
he's
analogy.
Just telling you he has a knife. You don't even know if that's true, and you're already ready to try and hang him based on his speech. He hasn't taken an action. We convict on acts, not speech.
We do convict on speech, though. You said yourself, fire in a movie theater is not allowed, right?
Yeah, that's not
that's actually not even true.
If you prove that you have a conspiracy to do something,
but so far all we have to go on is his claim that he has a knife, nothing more.
Okay. Okay, so I think this is good because I think we kind of hit the heart of the disagreement. So that's just where I take a different path because I mean to me once the first action happens, it's too late. Like you have to stop people before.
Yes, I agree. If Nick Fuentes takes any kind of action that places him outside of the bounds of liberalism or the football game, yes. Okay. But we already have a system in process they're going to be acting if you take anybody that takes an action outside of.
But I'm saying but what him taking the action might mean is undermining the very institutions we have that would punish him for taking those actions. If he was able, or not just him, but just any movement, any fascist or tanky movement like that, what they seek to do is use the institutions to invade them and change them and undermine them slowly, tactfully.
What institution has he invaded? Because so far,
currently
everything
nothing,
talked
Jeff,
about tonight, I see more from the left than the right.
Yeah, I'm not just talking about Fuentes right now. I'm talking about how those authoritarian takeovers happen, broadly speaking, and that we should
seen
be
them happen
on the
in academia at the universities.
Sure, maybe that's an example.
I saw them happen at Evergreen. What institution has Nick infiltrated?
Nothing, because we deplatformed him. He's taken over nothing, right? He was trying to. He made AFPAC as an alternative to CPAC. They got tens of thousands of people to show up. I mean,
isn't that all within the rules of the football game?
I think that whenever you declare your intent to come to the football game and drop a nuclear bomb in it, that's you stepping outside of the bounds of the football game. I think let's just like even like on a personal level,
people have done anything to the rises to that level that they've threatened.
Right. The fire
a credible threat
that you're ready to throw at them.
Dropping a nuclear bomb or even a knife.
I think it's the intent to overthrow democracy and convert to dictatorship itself. That intent itself, to me, is you've stepped into that territory where you're out of the bounds.
And for me, it doesn't become a danger until the intent's acted on. Okay. I don't want a society where we go around policing intent and then imposing these extreme consequences on intent.
I do, but that's okay. At least I understand that.
So you're good with thought crime. Really?
No, it's not thought. No, it's not thought crime. It's stated intent crime. I mean, it's not the private thoughts in their heads. It's them publicly going out every day doing political advocacy to spread an ideology that wants to install dictatorship and mass deport people. I mean, that's I don't know.
It hasn't risen to the level of a credible threat yet.
I also think it's laughable, and I want to keep it laughable by ensuring that we don't allow it to just fester and spread untrammeled.
Let me use a different sports analogy than you use. You use the football thing.
Okay.
There used to be this old sketch on this show called Upright Citizens Brigade. And this episode was called Pro Thunderball. Pro Thunderball is the most insane game that's ever played. It looks like baseball, but people carry weapons around. It's the most dangerous game in the world. I mean, the only thing they don't carry is guns. But on the field, there is a circle with a loaded gun in it. No one's allowed to touch this gun. We're not allowed to touch it. No one's allowed to do anything with it, because it's just the gun circle. Now, there's a part of the game where somebody drives onto the football or to the baseball field with a car and tries to run people over, and they have to avoid it. But the gun circle is not to be touched until one day somebody grabs the gun. They grab the gun circle. And the thing is like, why would the gun circle even be there? No one's allowed to touch it. But when it happens and suddenly the gun is picked up by someone and is fired indiscriminately, everyone is shocked. They're all going, how could this have happened? And that's what I see is like the kind of attitude you have there. You have this gun, this loaded gun that you're saying that we can only use in these special circumstances when someone rises this level, but until it gets to that point. But you're still not going to be able to control who uses it, and it could be against someone like you. Could be against. It doesn't matter because we have ideas about what the dangerous ideas are. I agree. Nick Fuentes' ideas are bad. They're bad, but the best way to combat them is with good ideas, because people hear good ideas and they realize that in comparison to the bad ideas, they're bad. And that usually happens in most people's brains. Now, there's people that are just not mentally capable of handling normal logic, but those people aren't, thankfully, the majority right now anyway. And I just see it happen all the time where these bad ideas come out there, and people, once they hear them, they just generally, they shrug and they go away. They walk away. They ignore that person. That most general people that aren't concerned with politics, they just, now there's those angry people that are going to follow the Nick Fuentes. They're going to follow Hassan Piker, but Hassan Piker isn't really spurring anyone to action either. He's not leading any revolts against any government buildings, which is why, I mean, look at the closest thing we've come to any kind of real insurrection was January 6th. And it was a bunch of like people with costumes lackadaisically wandering into the Capitol building and taking selfies in like people's offices. I mean, we're talking about, and I think that the January 6th was bad, but I also think we definitely have had somewhat of an overreaction in terms of the people that have been jailed for it. But I still think it was bad. I don't think it's a good thing.
But we survived it too.
Yeah, we also survived it without only one person died. That person was shot by a security guard and she wasn't even doing anything really. Yeah. I mean,
wasn't she crawling through a window or something?
Yeah, she leaned through this window and the guy shot her. I mean, she shouldn't have been there. She shouldn't have been doing that. Trespassing is bad in general. I'm not for it, but I certainly, I don't think that people in the media, they didn't even seem to give a shit about that one person that got shot. Although anybody gets shot in a protester type situation, it's on the leftist side. I'm saying like the media overall is in favor of any of this stuff, the left stuff, but the right stuff, it gets demonized horribly. And I don't necessarily think it's bad to demonize the stuff on the right, but you should demonize equally. Sure. It doesn't happen though. I mean, saying that having that weapon there and just being okay with it is never going to work out the way you think it will. Now, I hope that it works out the way you hope it will, and I hope the right people do get, get properly ignored or deplatformed or whatever. But more than likely, if you ignored most of them, they would just eventually go away because they're not really trying to do anything but grift most of the time. Now, if they really were out there organizing rallies constantly, if they were organizing rallies and they were out there and they're the cult of personality around Nick Fuentes or whoever, similar to how Trump was, really. I mean, and like there's people out there showing up in droves, like, pumping their fists in the air, like ready to go and try to storm some like government buildings or something like that, then yeah, there's a definite need to be looked into that. But we're talking about minor public figures. I just don't see it, man. I see where you're coming from, but it also reminds me a lot of the mentality that I grew up hearing all the time of the Christian right in the 80s, where that would often be what I would hear from people in Christian media about like why this person on the left was evil and why we need to make sure they get shut down. We had to go after this person. We need to get them right now, because if we don't, what are they going to do? What are they going to do next? Are they going to legalize gay marriage of all things? That they were trying to stop those things because they saw those things coming. But, and I'm glad they didn't. I'm glad they didn't win. But they had that same mentality you've got right now.
Okay, but can you see how? I mean, I feel like you're drawing an equivalency between anybody that then wants to use our institutions to stop anything. Like we're all the same because we want to use power to stop things. And I just don't think there's an equivalency. I mean,
we already have a system of laws in place that directs us how to use power to stop things, and a whole enforcement system behind it.
Yeah, and I'm just for continuing to tweak and improve that system. Like I don't think it's fair to draw an equivalency between like, oh well, like these Christian people in the 80s wanted to stop Marilyn Manson because he sang about sex and drugs, and I want to stop a fascist from taking over our government and mass deporting people. We're both the same because y'all both want to stop a person from doing something you don't like. It's like I don't think that's a like y'all want to also stop certain people from doing certain things. It's just where do we draw our lines?
I want to stop the trolls from.
Think about it. Marilyn Manson actually probably did inspire a lot of kids to have sex and do drugs, whereas Nick Fuentes inspired very few people to storm any government buildings and actually try to enact any of his insane ideas. I'm saying like, which one's actually more dangerous.
My criticism of Roenn is not that stopping fascism is bad.
I
don't think it's the threat that he thinks it is. So it doesn't require the type of action that he is prescribing.
I also don't think it is currently a massive threat. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that as for the project of how we ought to conduct ourselves for the next, hopefully, if America makes it another couple thousand years, in the entire process, when there is fascist ideology that rises up, we should argue against it. We should demonstrate it, why it's wrong. We should talk about it. We should have those conversations. And once those talks are had and the points are out there, and there are still fascist people trying to use
feudalism is a process.
I don't think so.
It's an ongoing process.
I think we do not owe them our platforms to spread their message.
We don't have to owe them our platforms, not the media.
That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
You're talking about debanking,
but you don't own the platform. Like, it's not your platform. It's our. It's all citizens.
Yeah, no. What I'm saying is that those private companies, if they want, they should be able to deplatform those people, and I hope that they do. I'm not going to force them to do it, but my hope is that they would do that, and they probably will, because that stuff isn't marketable anyway, right? But that's all I'm saying.
And you want them debanked, and you want them to not have any kind of megaphone at all.
Ideally, yes. Ideally, yeah. If you are that objectively pushing for, I want to take over the country and have a dictatorship and do horrible things to people, yes. Now, I don't want that to happen to conservatives or to liberals or to anybody who's in...
Just the people that you subjectively judge as a threat. Like we could judge you
just like anybody does. I'm making the same judgment as anybody else.
I think it's the grabbing the gun from Chris's metaphor.
Yeah. I think that in the metaphor, it doesn't carry because the other people already have a gun. I don't think that metaphor carries at all, because we're not playing the same game.
Nick Fuentes has a gun. The only gun he's had so far is speech. So you have the same gun that you can use to counter his.
Did y'all ever see this conversation that Richard Spencer had? I think possibly with Fuentes. And this was kind of one of my first wake up moments, because again, and I for most of my life, really just until about a year ago, I've held the exact same position as what y'all are saying. The thing that made me start to change my mind was a couple of experiences. One of them was seeing Richard Spencer talk about how he was talking to another like fascist guy, and that guy was saying he was like, we don't really support like free speech, like, do we? Or like, are we for that? And Spencer goes, no, of course we're not. And that guy's like, oh, okay, I guess we're talking kind of like we're being frank now. And Spencer was like, yes. He's like, of course we don't support free speech. He's like, we will use free speech as a front, and we'll use the institutions to spread our message. But like once we take over, no, of course we're not going to have free speech.
That's not a secret.
Well, yeah, but just him saying it out loud that early on, I was like, okay. That was the beginning of me being like...
It's like David Duke doing the same thing. David Duke being like, oh, yeah, we definitely want to kill black people. I mean, like, okay.
Yeah.
If he actually killed a black person, though, put him in jail. Or if he tries to kill one, put him in jail for attempted murder. But, I mean, just saying that, like, he thinks we should do that, I don't think that rises to the level that we need to... I mean, maybe we should keep an eye on him. We should keep an eye on him. We should watch him. But I don't think we should, try to... we shouldn't cripple him. We shouldn't go and beat him to the point where he can't walk just so he can't.
No. I mean,
I'm saying
all you did was adopt his value. Hearing him say we don't believe in free speech made you want to go and shut down his speech. You're doing his work for him.
No, because to me, it is the paradox of tolerance.
Because you're the good one.
It's that once people they are the first one to step outside of the game. Then I think that they relieve anybody else of their responsibility to treat them in that fair pro-social game, because they don't want to coexist with... I'm not the one that doesn't want to coexist with them. They don't want to coexist with me. They started that process.
And so yet you drew first blood
with you.
So therefore I no longer have an obligation to play fair with them, because they were the first to say...
We disagree on what constitutes stepping outside of the game.
Yeah, I think so. Because like it sounds to me like you're the one drawing first blood in that situation.
Well,
Like
I'm not drawing first blood.
But you're going to actually attack them and try to take away everything they have.
No, I'm not saying to go. I'm not saying because of their intent that they deserve to be like physically attacked. I would not do that.
I'm not. I used the physical thing as a metaphor. That was a metaphor. I don't mean physically. I mean like trying to debank them, trying to take everything from them. I mean, like Epstein probably should have been debanked and shit like that because he was using his money to traffic children. I mean, but I don't know now. But then again, he should have been criminally charged. Is the thing, and if that sort of thing happens, then that would have happened. He never happened because he's dead, I guess. But I mean, there's plenty of people out there that like have done really terrible things, but I feel like people that get caught up in this social justice shit, like want to go after Nick Fuentes and stuff. I think they just make him more powerful. I don't think they're actually doing anything to hurt him.
What if can we make it a smaller example? Like, what if you have a website? Like, what if the three of us? It's the Jeff and Chris and Roenn website. Okay, we build this thing.
To have one.
Yeah, it's
be part of it. Our streaming network.
I'm always down.
So we do. Let's say we have this. We build this website. We have this website. All three of us.
Okay, so we're building a website. We're building like a little platform. And say it's like a social media site, whatever. And then there's a group of people that want to make accounts on our site. And they go, hey, we hate you guys. And we want to do everything in our power to spread lies about you and bring you down. And we want to get on your website and eventually try to take it over and like do all this stuff. And they have intents to do horrible, terrible things to us. And they're like, but like, for whatever reason, they're like, we have to use y'all's website to do it though. Can we have an account? I would be like, no, absolutely fucking not. Why would we let you on our platform that we built just so you can try to destroy and slander and smear us and come after us and harass us and send your trolls after us? And it's like, no. So that's the analogy that scales to society. I feel like if we build a society and we agree to live within liberalism, and there are people that want to use our platforms to say, hey, we want to destroy y'all's stuff, take it over, and then turn it into fascism, I don't think we owe them our platforms, meaning our websites, our banking system, anything. We don't owe them using that if they are outside of the game and they seek to destroy our system. Why should we let them use our system to then destroy it?
I agree, but the analogy it breaks down once you scale to the public square, once you scale to America as a nation, because you're talking about a private, the right to free association and a private.
Yeah, we have every right to not let them on our website. I don't feel we have any right to try to get anyone else or to try to flex any power to get anyone else to do the same thing. And for that matter, YouTube has tons of people that spend all their time talking about how shitty YouTube is, and YouTube does fine. So, like, when you're at a certain size, I don't think that it really matters that much. I mean, like, for our little website, that wouldn't be good because that would
America is not our little website. It doesn't work like our little website.
Yeah, we're so big that it's. I mean, probably.
So somebody coming on our website trolling us, trying to undermine us, is not the same thing as an American citizen exercising the right to free speech, because they're in the website already. They have the account, and there's processes to deplatform them if they do something really egregious. But we don't get to make that determination. We don't have the power to do that. We have to go through the existing process.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what I'm saying. You're trying to do an end run around liberalism and impose these consequences on outside of the existing framework that we have to determine and then impose those consequences.
We're just talking about what we ideally think should happen. I'm not saying that I would create legislation that would compel every bank and website to deplatform these people. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying how I believe it best ought be handled.
But that's how it would have to be implemented.
Well, I think already we see our institutions coordinating to do that with people like Nick Fuentes.
Yeah, I think some of that's illiberal, but it is private. These are private institutions, so they kind of fall outside of
like what's happening with Russell Brand right now, where the British government try to pressure Rumble into deplatforming him, and YouTube actually did demonetize him, and then I think went somewhere else demonetized him or deplatform him as well. I mean, like, yeah, he might be a rapist. I don't know. I don't know anything about Russell Brand and his stuff, but I think that that's completely wrong for them based on an accusation that nobody has any idea about.
Yeah.
Just to start like taking things away, trying to punish him just for being accused of something. And that's what happens in most of these situations.
Until proven guilty.
Yeah, I mean, but like, see what you're saying. What you're saying is you're talking about somebody who's advocating for genocide. Yeah, and I get that. It's way worse. And they're openly saying it. They're saying it openly.
They're not openly. He said it was in code.
Let's just imagine that they were. They're openly promoting genocide. I'm not saying Nick Fuentes or anything.
Then there are probably laws already on the books.
Probably so, for hate speech. But I'm saying, so this person's openly promoting that, right? I still don't think that I still don't see that that's I don't know. I lost my train of thought. I was going to say like that with Russell Brand, you've got a situation where he's been criminally accused of something, even though now he's being criminally investigated as well, which is good. Because if he did something wrong, he should be criminally investigated and tried and charged. But when we come, something comes simply, but if he had just like done like, I don't know, like, Andrew Tate talked a lot of shit about like, all the, basically admitted to trafficking women and all this stuff like that. Talked about a lot of it. But a lot of he's also a big bravado talker. He talks all this shit. And I mean, he could have just been lying about all this stuff. What about all the rappers that talk about murdering people? Should they all be, they talk about wanting to kill somebody. They talk about actually doing it in their songs. I mean, should we deplatform them than Nick Fuentes?
No, I think that it's a much more nuanced process of looking at a person's like their life and their actions and their intents and what they are putting every ounce of their being into, and seeing that if what they are doing is that egregious and evil, that it's okay for us to not let them use our institutions to do that. I don't know. I mean,
us, you mean you? Like, who's qualified to?
Everybody is going to make that judgment, Jeff.
If it's a nuanced process,
even if I don't make that judgment, then they'll just do it to me. You know what I'm saying?
The market decides. The market's going to work itself out. Then you don't have to get involved because everyone will naturally just ignore that person because their ideas are bad. That's what I've been saying. But nonetheless, I want to be very clear here. Even though this has been kind of contentious and everything, I respect you, Roenn, and I really appreciate this conversation. I don't want it to come across like I'm being like, I want to make sure that I'm not coming off disrespectful or anything, because I don't mean
no, not at all.
Because I know this is like 2 against 1 here, so I just don't want to come across like
I
only disagree
no,
you're
wrong, you're wrong.
I disagree with him on the level of threat.
Yeah,
and I disagree with him on the authoritarian tactics in response.
Yeah, I mean that's what we both disagree with him on.
Yeah, so I mean, so just so I understand, I mean, it's that the areas where we don't agree are that you agree that once people step outside of the bounds of that broader framework, it would be okay to do what I'm saying, but you don't think
I agree.
Them stating the intent to do fascism, that's not enough. They have to make that first actual act, and
then we have an existing set of laws in place that would address that act. We don't need your version of what should happen, and unless you implement it through the political process. Because I'm still pro-liberalism. It sounds like we're doing an ipso map. We should do one on this one day.
I would be down, because I'm for liberalism for liberals. But I'm not.
But who gets to decide who's a liberal or not? You're just arbitrarily deciding these people are no longer liberals, and I am not.
Which in itself is illiberal.
Comfortable making that judgment without some kind of due process.
I mean, making that judgment makes you not liberal in that sense because you're literally doing the opposite. So I mean,
Right, that's what I'm saying. The authoritarianism is the
internally
illiberalism.
inconsistent.
The first step outside of the game is coming from Roenn when he says stuff like that.
No, I'm not stepping outside of the game because they're stepping outside of it by saying that they're a fascist and they want dictatorship.
Saying you're a fascist is not stepping. Taking a fascist act would be stepping outside of the game.
Or starting a political movement to attempt to get to a place
People
where there
are
is a
allowed to
fascist
start political
takeover.
movements. We have an entire
If that's what they're
framework
doing,
within which they can they're regulated.
But if you allow that to happen, that's how Nazi Germany happened.
Nazi Germany also happened in Germany in the 40s in a much smaller country with many fewer people. And yes, I agree that I don't want to see something like happening in Nazi Germany happen here. I just don't think it's possible.
Take it as a serious. But I think a lot of this is psychology, and like subjective, and
it might be.
I think whenever you react out of fear too, you feed into that kind of shit. Whereas, as opposed to standing up to it in a more positive sense, instead of reacting to what they're doing, instead of standing up to it and starting your own counter statement against it that shows how foolish it is, I think that's a much more powerful thing to do.
I mean, I think that we should do both. I mean,
the fear seems to be that liberalism will not protect you from this nightmare scenario that you're envisioning, and I don't have the same fear. I have more faith in liberalism to protect us from that.
I think that whenever liberalism encounters fascism, it folds and it defeats itself.
I don't think I have not seen that danger here in the United States happen.
In fact, liberalism ultimately overcame fascism.
It overcame Trump.
Yeah, I mean, we overcame Nazi Germany. We won World War II.
Yeah.
Then Soviet Russia fell. It's gone. What they have now
but
is
it
not
fell
even
because
a shadow.
we killed them. We didn't just debate them into
Every
going
time
away.
our
We killed
system
them.
has been stress tested,
They killed themselves more than we killed them.
Well, maybe. Yeah, I mean, I reject this framing that I'm being authoritarian because I'm not trying to throw people in prison or kill them.
Well,
I'm just saying that
tactics you're advocating for.
I just don't agree. I don't think that it's authoritarian for me to say that platforms like Facebook and Twitter and banks should be allowed to say, hey, we don't want to serve this person. That's all I'm saying. I don't think that's authoritarian
at all.
Yeah,
acting upon it would be.
Wait, what do you mean?
Saying it is not. You're not authoritarian for just saying it. If you were to act upon it.
Wait, like me saying that I think Twitter should be able to ban them is not authoritarian? Or like, what are you saying?
You just said it doesn't make you authoritarian for just saying that companies should be allowed to deplatform mobile.
Yeah, because
I agreed. I said yes. Saying it does not make you authoritarian. It's an authoritarian statement, but it doesn't make you an authoritarian.
But I can't act on it because I don't run Twitter. I'm simply saying that I think that they should be able.
If you could, and you did, like Yoel Roth, then I would say you've crossed over into authoritarianism.
Yeah, but if you publicly are advocating that you think that those things should happen.
Just like I don't think Nick Fuentes saying that he wants a dictatorship makes him a fascist until he actually takes a fascist act.
Okay, so then me saying publicly that I want Twitter to deplatform him is not me being authoritarian, but if I was a legislator and I pushed policy for it, it would?
Well, I mean, philosophically,
if you did it through the political process, no. That's not authoritarian. That's
you might be an authoritarian philosophically speaking, but I think it makes you an actual authoritarian.
See, I think it's more authoritarian to do it with the political process because then it's legal. And the thing that I am saying is that I believe that a private company should be able to deplatform a person who is like not marketable and who is also just generally evil.
Well, they can already.
I don't think that's authoritarian.
They already can, and they do in some cases. I just don't think they should unless they broke the rules of that platform.
I mean, Twitter deplatformed Trump.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, like Twitter, I don't think they should be deplatformed people unless they broke the rules of Twitter. Just like I don't think someone should be deplatformed on YouTube unless they break the rules of YouTube. But whenever you're acting up that platform, yeah, you should be expelled for breaking the rules. But everyone, there's the agreed upon rules, and everyone follow those rules. But just because somebody has some ideas on that platform, but they're still following the rules, I just don't think that, or especially if they do it on another platform. It's like somebody makes a really racist statement on Twitter. So every single bank, every single platform should shut them down, should take away everything they have because they did this one thing on over here. I just like the same reason I don't think someone should get fired because of something they did in their home life, unless it's like murder or child molesting or something like that. But then they should go to jail as well. So it doesn't really say, it's kind of beside the point whether or not they lose their job because they're going to be in jail anyway. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that until something rises to that level of criminality, I just don't see that it's right to try to advocate for all private companies taking this kind of like mob mentality against people, because it only encourages these people to try to figure out ways to try to like overcome that. And, then you have all these, alternative platforms and everything. They don't really work, but I mean, I don't know. I feel it just feels wrong more than anything, I guess. Intellectually, I think it makes sense what I'm saying, but I think
it feels wrong to me too. It feels wrong to me too, but I still hold the position because
you can justify it.
I think that my moral intuitions are wrong, and I think that this position is actually like the more pragmatic one. My gut says everybody just needs to have all the free speech they can ever have, and we need to just platform everyone, and we just keep talking and keep having conversations forever. That's my intuition. But the older I'm not.
Well, maybe when you reach our age,
I'm not very experienced.
Yeah, maybe so.
Well, the more that I have seen online, the more people I've interacted with, the more I knew ethno-nationalists who also kind of turned me very cynical after multiple talks with him, of him saying things like he acknowledges certain things online or propaganda. He's fine with it. He's fine with lies. It furthers his cause. That made me go, well, then why should I ever treat you fairly if you're just going to do this? And then that made me go, how naive am I that I'm over here trying to argue that this guy should be platformed and Nick Fuentes should be platformed. And I'm trying to fight for these people to have a voice when he's going to turn around and tell me, he was like, thank you for trying to let me have a voice because I'm just going to use this to spread lies and fuck you over. And I was like, well, then that just woke me up a little bit to like, oh, that's how this game is actually played.
See, like,
and
I
was
see
like,
I think it's fine to not advocate for him to have a voice, but to actively try to restrict that voice is different. Like, you don't have to advocate.
Well, I'm not actively trying to restrict
harm.
it. I'm just, in the context of this conversation with y'all, I'm simply saying that I think that that's a good thing if he's deplatformed. But I'm not going to go out and like do a political advocacy campaign to pressure Twitter into doing it. Just in my private head, and I guess to our, maybe one viewer or something now, that's just my take on it.
So back in the 40s or 30s, I guess it was, whatever, the ACLU actually went to bat for the people that wanted, the Nazis that wanted to have a parade somewhere up in the northern states. So you think that was a bad thing, that the ACLU stood up for the free speech rights of these people who were supporting Nazis?
I'd say that was probably not a smart move. Yeah. Probably. I mean, I need to look into the details of that, but off the top of my head, yeah, that seems like a thing that I probably wouldn't support. Why you would ever advocate for a group that actively wants to kill you?
You're advocating for a principle.
Yeah, you're advocating for a principle. Exactly.
But that principle is only applied within the broader cooperative framework of those people saying we want to coexist with you. I think that's the thing that I feel like maybe I'm not communicating well enough, or y'all are just not really hearing, is like that framework goes away when those people say, if we take power, we're going to kill you.
No, I don't think it goes away when they say anything. I think it goes away when they take an action.
If they manage to convince that much of the country that they're right, then yeah, I guess so. I mean, I don't see it happening. I don't see them ever.
You're giving more power to their speech than
I think you're dreaming if you think that a Nazi party would ever get more than, even, it would be insane if they got 10% of the vote, and that's not even like going to come close to actually getting any kind of real power. But they'll never even get 10% of the vote. Look at, like, no third party candidate ever does, really. I mean, it's just like
not right now, not yet. But that sounds like the kind of things that
not since the early days of America, like 200 years ago, has any third party been any significant vote getter.
How are you certain you're not catastrophizing when there's nothing concrete to indicate that it's a genuine?
Because this
like
has
nothing
been
in the United States has come.
I think that
to
all of human history backs up what I'm saying,
but not U.S. history.
Do you all think that the world and human nature has fundamentally changed that much in the past 200 years that we never have to worry about that happening in America ever? Like, I think
America's unique compared to a lot of countries.
I think each country is unique, and each country has its own history, and it modifies human nature.
If we really had a civil war, now, if there really was a civil war in the country, if it really split apart, let's say that America split into 4 different smaller countries, there would be a significant threat in that case, yes. In the country the size it is, hell, we can barely get anything done as it is. I mean, I just don't see a radical shift like that taking place in American politics. As much as like those kind of ideas get spread around. I mean, you look at like Bernie didn't even get that far with his democratic socialism, and I mean that itself. No, I mean, I'm not. Agree. I mean, I liked Bernie because he was principled. I thought, but he's not. He's actually turned out to just be a fucking rich guy like everybody else. So fuck him. I don't support Bernie anymore, and I never will again. However, I did support him at the time because at least I thought he was principled. At least I thought he believed in something. However, I even back then I wasn't sure that the things he believed in were necessarily good for the country, but at least he believed in something as opposed to every other politician, which just seems like they just do whatever's popular or whatever's going to get them power. So, I mean, like at least it's kind of like the devil kind of thing in that situation. But even he couldn't even that's how fucked our political system is, that I don't see that any Nazis are going to get any real way in there.
I'm not worried about like looking at other countries and saying that could happen here. I look at America and say, what can I realistically expect to happen here based on what has happened here? I've lived through Nixon. I've lived through Ford, Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, both of the Bushes, Bill Clinton, Obama, Trump. I haven't seen anything that's given me a reason to have the level of fear that you have about something that hasn't even come close to happening here yet.
I don't have a level of fear about it. Like if it comes across like that, like I don't stay up at night thinking about this. Like I'm not. Okay. I don't have a fear of a fascist takeover at all. I don't think that would ever happen, at least like in my lifetime.
If you're not worried about it, then if you're not afraid of it and you're not worried about it, it's just that you just don't like them.
Really. I'm saying that pragmatically, that is how I think that societies should handle authoritarianism, ours included. Do I think that we're at a particular threat of it like realistically happening? I think there's some questionable things about people like Trump and DeSantis that I would consider like ever so slightly fascist. But
that's not untrue. I mean, I agree. I really am in the center, even though I don't call myself a centrist. I do see that both the left and the right have some serious authoritarian issues. I don't like either one of them. I think Biden's shown some real authoritarian impulses too. I mean, and he's actually the president, so
I'm not sure
if he can actually drag himself across the floor every day. But I mean.
If his corpse can sit up enough to sputter out a speech. No,
if Kamala could string together a coherent sentence, I might be afraid of her, but she can't. So, I mean,
I don't know about the Biden stuff being authoritarian. I mean, I know that Trump has, joked quite a few times about becoming president and then like they're never going to have an election again. And he's like, ha ha. But I'm kind of like,
it isn't a joke though. He's
maybe, but whenever you like,
I think January 6th put that to rest.
When you stack that against him still saying that the election was stolen and the implication that he should be the rightful president, I don't know.
Nobody took him seriously, including the people he appointed. No, they sided with our system of laws over him.
Hillary did that for 4 years, man.
That was a fun. Okay, I hate Hillary Clinton, but
we both do. I'm saying, but she was out there doing the same shit. I don't think she's any more dangerous than Trump.
I think there's a false equivalency there because what Clinton said was not that the election was stolen, but that Russia influenced it unfairly.
Oh no, she said the election was stolen. I've heard her say it in interviews. She used those words.
When she expounds upon it, her claim, which was still,
she
I think,
backs off.
Well, I mean, Russiagate was a way of saying it was stolen.
I know, but
it's a Mott and Bailey, though. It's a Mott and Bailey.
It's a different kind of claim, though, because what she claimed was that Russia, through interference on social media, persuaded more people to vote for Trump. That was her claim. Okay. She never claimed that at the point of our votes being cast that it was rigged. That's a fundamentally different claim than Trump saying that at the point of us voting, that system from inside was rigged. I just want to point that out.
I think she heavily implies that she thinks.
But for Russia's influence, she would have won.
That's what she was saying.
That's different from the type of stealing an election that Trump was accusing people.
Right.
Okay. I mean, I hate both of them. Don't get me wrong.
I think Trump would have won anyway. Like, that's what got me off of Russiagate, is once I started talking to the actual Republicans on the ground, it made the votes make sense. You didn't even need Russia to justify them.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. Once again, not a supporter of Hillary Clinton nor Trump. I don't like either one of them at all. I think they both did the same shit. And it's both the same kind of thing. She was talking shit. That's what she was doing. The same that Trump's doing.
Yeah, but she didn't take the action. She might have said some stuff. Trump actually concocted this whole plan and took action.
I really haven't seen much of a plan, but I mean, it seems like some people were trying something.
The fake elector scheme was a pretty crazy thing that they almost pulled off, and they didn't.
They also tried to do that. They also tried to do that with Hillary Clinton too. They also they also were going to send some electors to try to and then they.
I heard my stepdad tell me that too. I'm curious, just for a second. Can you send me a link to that? Because my grandpa and my dad say the same thing. I remember,
because I was like, if you think it's there's something fishy here, why are you even conceding? Fight it, and she didn't.
Yeah. I mean, I don't. I mean, once again, I'm not like a on Trump's side on this. I think Trump's ridiculous. But I think he's a buffoon. He's a clown. I think he got pumped up by the media into being like this, like thing that
he was pumping him up since the '80s.
Oh yeah, he was in
he was a game show host, The Apprentice, all of that. I'm gonna have to defend Hillary and Roenn on this one.
Okay, well, that's fine. I still think they're both as guilty. I
don't think there's an equivalency between what's in that indictment and anything Hillary Clinton might have said in an interview after the election.
I didn't read the
2v1 turns, Chris. How does it feel?
No, it's fine. I mean, I didn't read the indictment that closely, and the excerpts I read didn't really convince me that they had that much evidence for most of it. But it's still.
Did you read the indictment?
I read excerpts from it. I didn't read it all the way through, though. No. So I mean, I'm not the best.
It's only
most educated on it. Yeah, I know, and I didn't really care. So
the indictment sealed it for me. Like, there's no way of, and that's assuming they can prove what they claim they could prove. But they wouldn't.
That's what I'm saying. Like, until it's proven, it's just a bunch of accusations, and I don't know.
But they're pretty detailed and watertight accusations.
I don't know. I didn't see much evidence in it, but I'm not saying that it's not right. I think Trump's capable of it. I think he's capable of doing bad things. I mean, I don't know.
I'm going off of the indictment, and we'll see once it goes to trial. But I'm pretty confident that what I read in the indictment is the facts as late as going to be laid out.
I'm not doubting you. I'm not doubting you. I just didn't see any evidence in the indictment beyond the accusations. I'm not saying that they're not right. I mean, they're damning accusations, certainly, if they're true. But so was the shit about Biden and the.
But this is an actual indictment.
Yeah, I know, but an indictment is still just a list of accusations
until they prove it. Yes, yeah. But this indictment is so well put together that I'm confident that the proof is there. I have no reason to doubt the indictment.
I mean, I guess I haven't read a lot of indictments, to be fair, so I don't know if this one is better than another one. It seems like anything other list of like someone saying it just seemed like someone saying like that you did this, you did this, you did this. I mean, there wasn't much evidence in it, but it doesn't mean they don't have evidence.
There was. Maybe I have no reason to have that level of skepticism toward this indictment and not take it on its face.
Once again, I hope he goes to jail. So, I mean, I hope they can prove it. I hope it's not just another damn squib like everything else they've thrown at Trump. because I'd love it for him to not be involved in American politics ever again. That would be great. I would love to never hear Trump's voice again or see his fucking face involved in anything around American politics. Don't get me wrong. I don't support Trump in any sense. I just didn't see it myself with the excerpts I read. Now, that doesn't mean they're not there. I didn't read the indictment.
Just start from the beginning. Start from the first page.
I won't.
Read down.
I'm just admitting it. I'm not going to do it. So I'll believe you guys. I'll take your word on it. I'll take your word on it. I'll just
I'm going to put out a video at some point where I deep dive the indictment. If you ever want to watch that, I'm going to try to make it not too insanely long, just to kind of try to put it all into like a 10 or 20 minute thing. I guess I'm probably going to have to go here soon, but just before I get off, I just wanted to kind of circle back around to say that like, I don't agree with the characterization of my position being authoritarian, that whenever people behave like that they ought to not use our institutions. And I just want to just and if y'all don't agree with that, like, it's fine, you know.
I said illiberal,
but because to me, I think
illiberal is a better word for it, honestly, than authoritarian.
I think that when people declare, like if they declared like, I'm going to go do this and kill this person and do that is a thing that we don't allow. Then
no, we do allow. I can tell you a personal story. I was in Louisiana and I got threatened online. I was going to move to Las Vegas and someone in Vegas threatened me. I reported it to the Louisiana police. They came and took a report, and they said in Louisiana, it is not a crime to threaten someone. They have to actually take an action before.
Okay, I think that's a bad legal system.
And I thought it was stupid. I argued with them, but there are places in the United States where
I'm not sure if federal law is the same way, but my position is that when a person declares a thing like that we should believe them, and that we should take steps to prevent them from doing that thing.
That's the guy that broke my nose, in fact. So he carried out the actual threat.
Yeah.
And I tried to report it, and they said until he does something, they cannot take it seriously.
I think that whenever people make those kind of, and I thought there was a legal precedent of like, it has to be like, not like reputable, but it has to be a threat that is like sufficiently detailed and planned out enough to be taken credulously or something. I thought that was like a federal thing.
It's a credible threat.
I believe that
too.
Yeah, I believe that's illegal, but maybe it's not. I don't know. But my position is just that if people declare very clear, specific intents like that, they're taking steps to slowly act it out. If you're a fascist, you say, I love fascism. My whole thing is trying to bring fascism to America. I'm starting a fascist movement. We have like fascist clubs. And if we take power, we're going to fucking kill everybody. If you're saying stuff like that, I think that crosses a threshold where, you know, you need to, at the very least, be deplatformed, if not imprisoned for that. And I don't think that's authoritarian of me to say, because I believe that we already do that to people that are like, they have a specific plan to go do this and kill this person. I mean, we charge people on conspiracy all the time. Yeah. And that, to me, at least maybe not legally, but to me, morally, that falls under the same idea of it is an intent for direct criminality to try to take over and kill people. So that's why I support them being at the very least deplatformed, at the most possibly imprisoned if it's credible and direct enough.
And you consider the statement of intent as an attempt to take over and do that, and I don't.
I think it's the whole action of, it's the statement, and I think it's a person like Fuentes's entire lifetime of starting a political movement to do that, with his stated purpose being that. I think to me, morally, that feels like that is enough to be like, we need to do something about that. But, you know, if y'all don't agree with that, that's fine. If that bar isn't high enough for y'all, like, that's okay. We can just diverge there. But that's my position. And I don't think that's like illiberal or
well,
it's definitely a difference.
It's the difference between
process.
It's the difference between somebody saying, I think all people like Roenn should be wiped out, and someone saying, I'm going to kill Roenn. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
one of them's a specific credible threat. One of them's like this broad general statement that someone could be saying for hyperbole, or they could be saying it like, I mean, I think that's where it comes down to. Like someone's making these broad general statements like, oh, I just hate the Jews or whatever. Like it's stupid, but like I don't.
Yeah, but
think
then
that's
if they're like, we
a
should
threat.
kill Jews, then that becomes a little bit
Yeah,
more.
but we have laws for that.
We
Yeah,
do.
I
Well,
mean-
then that's what I'm saying. Then we should that should be the thing that we.
Well, did
Yeah,
he say
and I
we
agree.
should kill Jews?
We should find random
You
Jews
should
in
have
the
led
streets
with
and kill them.
that.
Technically, no. But
He said
that's
it's
the
coded.
thing, Jeff. Though that's the
Okay.
thing.
Yeah,
It's
the coded thing, man. That's you can't
Well-
do that. Somebody has to actually say it. They actually have to make the threat. That you can't say that. Well, he didn't say it, but I know he was thinking it.
well.
You can't do
How
that.
about this? How about him? Yeah. Okay. I guess technically, because he's a smart person, he's going to word his things in certain ways. But like when he says oh shit, sorry, my thing fell out. When he says 40% of the country is non-white and that number needs to be like 1%, and we're going to make that happen. And then he goes like, well, he's like, I personally wouldn't use violence to do it, but it's got to happen somehow. And he's like, and you're like, I mean, what the fuck do you think is going to happen when that guy takes over? It's like, he's like, I mean, it's going to be attempts of mass deportation, and if met with resistance, will lead to genocide. That's how it works every single time. And he can sit there and say all day, he's like, I wouldn't do that. Well, I think that maybe we should believe people when they tell us what they want to do. I don't think he's going to take over and do it. But again, the intent to do that and the acting out of the political movement to achieve that goal, at the very least, again, my position is just that those people don't need to be part of the public platformed discourse. That's just my position on it.
And I just think that's an illiberal position. But I'll tell you what, we can end on this. I would be willing to do an if-so map with you on this one day.
I'd be down for that. And maybe I am kind of illiberal. I'm not sure. I haven't delved into that idea too much, but I might be. I don't know. But maybe we should treat illiberal people.
And I may be more naive than is warranted. I definitely have been in the past, and I'm definitely willing to entertain.
Yeah, well, that's
I
fair.
may be the naive one here, but I do have faith in our system.
I hope you're right. And yeah, I'm totally down to do an if-so map. If y'all ever want to do it again or talk about kind of the concept of deplatforming,
I have to get
stuff.
John to teach me how to do it. We're supposed to do one too.
He's good with the highlighter.
Let's ask John to come on and do it with us. We do all four of us since we
yeah.
I haven't done one before.
That'd be fun.
Well, if we have a good 4 or 5, 6 hours to kill one day, that'll be.
Well, I mean, we can plan it for when we come back from your little break this week, and we could maybe do it next week whenever you get back from your trip. We just try to figure out a day that everyone's available. Yeah,
anytime
I'll contact John. I'll contact John on Discord, and we'll see what we can work out.
Okay.
You could pull him out of yoga class.
Let's.
I mean, he popped up in chat for a minute. He's out there. So he listens to the show. I know sometimes. So.
Oh, cool. Well, yeah. No, I'm super down. I appreciate the conversation, guys. It was fun.
Yeah, same here.
It's been fun. Yeah, it's been really good. Really good one.
I always like our conversations.
Me too.
They have great value, and I mean that.
Yeah, I think this is a very valuable conversation, regardless of whether or not we come to the same conclusions. I think that it's very valuable to have those discussions. I mean, that's
absolutely
coming from someone who's staunchly liberal, as I guess we are.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't let people like Roenn.
I was about to tell him drop by any time. He's definitely welcome. Anytime.
I'm just saying, maybe Roen's ideas are dangerous, Jeff. Maybe we shouldn't platform him and let him, speak that kind of stuff.
I ain't worried about it.
Maybe I am dangerous.
He hasn't risen to the level of a credible threat yet.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, and I always enjoy having my ideas pressure tested. So anytime.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So it's been a really great stream, guys. It was good talking to Joe earlier, and we had Ron on for a minute, and this has been really great. So
we had Ron for a while. I'd like to do a whole episode just on Ron. I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, me too.
What he was, his theory.
I agree.
Okay, well, I gotta go eat. I haven't even eaten yet. It's almost midnight.
Yeah, it's
nice.
1 a.m. here. So
this is what happened with AOL. I got AOL addicted, and I didn't eat.
That happens with the best of us.
All right, guys. Well, it's been great talking to you once again, Roenn and Jeff, of course. And I guess I'll be in touch with you, Jeff. We'll figure out what we're going to stream next after tomorrow. Well, I'll talk to you tomorrow, though, with sorry, not tomorrow, Wednesday. I'll talk to you Wednesday.
For the movie.
For the movie, yeah. Or
the TV I'll stream sometime Wednesday during the day. Just not sure when. I think I put it for 1 o'clock.
Yeah, that's what you scheduled it for. I saw that. But I probably will be at the doctor then. So anyway, talk to you later. Bye.
Okay. See you guys.
Take care. Okay, I'm exhausted. That's it for today. I will see y'all on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Central. And I could play you out.
Get the fuck back before you're torn apart. Your pact with the devil ain't stronger than the holy arts. And don't be trying to bring that shit in here where we operate the knowledge that